Why don't you get out of here? But at this time, Tian took a step forward, made light of it, picked the wild boar out of the gully like a ball, and then cheered coldly. Wheezing, wheezing. Two wild boars heard this, such as amnesty, panicked. Tian looked at the eyes, and then with the group of small, for hooves fly, in a twinkling of an eye will disappear in the dense forest. Are you a fairy? At this time, the young girl finally woke up from the shock and looked at Tian in awe, trembling. Immortal? Compared with ordinary people, you can understand it in this way. Tian said casually, and then he continued to go deep into the mountains. The young girl looks at Tian's back in astonishment, and doubts are flying in her heart. Looking at him and the intimate contact in the service area that night, he seems to be a man of flesh and blood. But how can flesh and blood people have such terrible ability? Special function? Mutants? Or a superhero? At this moment, the young girl only feels that Tian is wrapped up in a huge cloud of doubt. But what she can be sure is that there must be a great secret hidden in the other party's ordinary appearance. After climbing along the foot of the mountain for 2 hours, they had already come to the mid-mountainside area. Instead of rushing to climb, Tian found a clean place to eat and drink some bread and mineral water from his backpack. When he saw the young girl looking at him greedily, he shook his head helplessly and threw her a piece of bread and a bottle of mineral water. Although the young girl is still in awe of Tian, she calms down a lot. Instead of being polite to Tian, she reaches for the mineral water and bread to eat and drink. With your ability, if we had just cleaned up that wild boar, we would have barbecue now. After biting the bread, the girl thought of the boar's fat body, and she couldn't help being greedy. Don't you see how many boars they have with them? Tianru looks at an idiot and looks at the girl. Danqiu is close to heaven and earth and respects nature. After 200 years of cultivation, what Tian has never lost is a kind heart. If you destroy the boar family just because you want to eat, what's the difference between him and the rubbish of Tian who plot his parents' money? Furthermore, boars are not the kind of people who hurt people at will. Tian thinks that there is something wrong with them. For a moment, the girl was puzzled, but she wondered why Tian didn't kill the boar, but it was easy to solve. To think about it, Tian is worried that after killing the 2 big wild boars, the little wild boar will be left unattended and will die in the jungle. But the more so, the more curious she was about Tian. What kind of person is this? He has a bodhisattva's heart? You still don't want to tell me about you? Tian finished eating bread, drank up a bottle of water, put the empty bottle into the backpack, looked at the girl and asked. The girl looks hesitant and looks at Tian, for example, fighting between heaven and man. Finally, she lowers her head and chews hard bread without saying a word. Tian saw that she didn't want to say anything and didn't force anything. When the girl finished eating the bread, she continued to walk up the mountain. He believed that sooner or later the girl would willingly tell him the truth. Half an hour later, Tian and the young girl came to a cliff. The breath of dewdrops. But as soon as he got close to this area, Tian, relying on Dante's ability to perceive the elixir, immediately noticed that there was a very subtle but extremely clear cold fragrance floating in the air. This taste is unique after the dewgrass leaves the dewflower. Once the dewflower blooms, no matter wind, frost, rain, snow, spring, summer, autumn and winter, the 4 seasons do not wither, the vitality is strong, extraordinary. Tian was still worried before that, even if he found condensation grass, in case it didn't bloom, he still needed to cultivate it for a period of time to cure Lu Hua. But now the dewgrass has opened the dewflower, it can save him a lot of time. Without any hesitation, Tian speeded up and rushed to the cliff bottom area where the cold fragrance came from. Fang Zhong, tell me honestly, what are you looking for in Huanggang Mountain? If you confess, our brother can leave you a way to live, otherwise, jia jia. But as soon as he got close to the bottom of the cliff, Tian heard a cold cheering in front of him. When he looked around, he immediately saw 2 middle-aged people standing on the flat ground beside the pool at the bottom of the cliff. 2 of them, exuding the air of Xuanji mountain people, were holding long knives in their hands, and their expressions were extremely bad. The middle-aged man named Zhuo Fangzhong, who was not far away from them, was in the late yellow stage. His whole body was almost full of wounds, and his clothes were torn, not to mention, they were stained dark red by blood. What's more amazing is that he had a wound cut on his waist by a sharp blade. It's bloody. According to Yi Tian's judgment, it's estimated that it's only half a finger short, and it will hurt his kidney. Yuan Ming and Yuan Chang, your Yuan family is unreasonable. Is it because you live near Huanggang Mountain that this place has become your family's private property? It's impossible for us to even go into the mountain for a walk? Fang Zhong was dripping with blood, looking at the two middle-aged people, gritting his teeth and saying, "If someone else comes to visit, it's really nothing, but you are a famous herbalist in Sanxiu. You just come to visit Huanggang Mountain. I don't believe that. In addition, my Yuan family is the strongest in southern Fujian. It's not wrong to say that Huanggang Mountain is owned by our family. I advise you to be wise. Otherwise, even if you go out of Huanggang Mountain, you can't go out of Manan." Yuan Mingjia gave a strange smile and looked at Fang Zhong, a cold way full of threats. The medicine collector? When Yi Tian heard these three words, his eyes changed slightly and he looked at Fang Zhong more. In Fangsuan spiritual realm, there are also monks like Fang Zhong. They have a much better perception of heaven and earth's elixir than ordinary people. They collect elixirs and exchange elixirs, magic weapons, secret scripts, and other things with large families to improve their cultivation. When he was in the Fangsuan spiritual realm, Yi Tian was also famous among the people who collected herbs besides the name of Emperor Dan. He was also known as the Emperor of Collecting Herbs. He said that he could not escape the search of Yi Tian for any kind of miraculous medicine. However, it is quite surprising for Yi Tian to meet a herbalist on earth. "Fang Zhong, while we are looking for you, our Yuan family have already gone to catch your wife, children. It will not be long before you get together in the Yuan family." Yuan Chang glanced at Fang Zhong and said coldly, "Your Yuan family is so vicious. Don't you even understand the reason why it's worse than your wife and children?" Hearing this, Fang Zhong's face suddenly changed, and his face showed a strong color of grief and indignation. Wow! At this time, the young girl behind Yi Tian also followed. Although her movement was light, it was obviously worse than Yi Tian. She stepped on a pile of gravel and made a lot of noise. "Who, get out!" Hearing the voice, Yuan Chang and Yuan Ming immediately turned their heads to the source of the voice and asked coldly. Yi Tian heard, but did not hide, walked out of the hiding place, appeared in front of the three. "We are donkey friends in the mountain. We accidentally met you. Please let us go. We'll take it as if we didn't see anything." And the young girl hears the sound, pretends to be panic in a hurry, trembles away. "Oh, tourists into the mountain, there's no business for you here, you go, remember to take care of your mouth." Yuan Chang looks at the young girl and says coldly, but he sweeps Yuan Ming from the corner of his eye. Almost at the same time when he was speaking, Yuan Ming's hand touched his waist, and a few cold stars came whistling towards Yi Tian and the young girl with a sharp sound. The Yuan family is really vicious. It's going to kill people. When Yi Tian saw this, his eyes suddenly became cold and the sanding machine splashed. "Run away, you two. I'll hold this guy down." But before he had any action, Fang Zhong suddenly jumped up, waved the long knife in his hand, shot down the cold stars, and yelled to Yi Tian and the young girl. "Fang Zhong, how dare you protect others when you are dying? Don't you think we can't kill you if we don't want to find out the truth about you entering the mountain?" Seeing this, Yuan Chang's anger rose from his eyes. He stepped forward with a long sword in his hand and wanted to take the middle of the lower part. At the same time, Yuan Ming rushes towards Yi Tian and the young girl. The light of the knife is as sharp as mercury. It makes people feel that everything in front of the knife has to be cut into two parts. What is the origin of these people? How can they be so fierce? Rao Shi, a young girl, has experienced a lot of life and death fighting, but when she faced Yuan Ming's knife, she still had a feeling of desperation. She felt that the guy in front of her was by no means comparable to those she had contacted in the past. Of course, compared with Yi Tian's methods before, this guy is still a little ridiculous. Fire, and at this time, Leaf Day hand forward gently a brush, cold in different way. In a flash, in the originally damp and cold air of the mountain forest, there was a blazing hot and dry breath, which made people feel like they were standing beside the burning fire, and the water vapor of their whole bodies seemed to be evaporated. Boom! Immediately after, a ball of fire suddenly appears in front of Yi Tian's body. The fireball, burning like the scorching sun, gives people a feeling that it seems to be able to burn through Jojo and burn the sky. What's this? Yuan Ming and Yuan Chang were completely absent-minded. Looking at the fireball, they opened their mouths wide and could not make any sound. At this time, the fireball suddenly turned and hit Yuan Ming heavily. Yuan Ming, who was so shocked by this incredible scene, had no time to make any response. He was hit heavily by a fireball. The fireball was so terrible that it could start a prairie fire. Yuan Ming only had time to howl, and the whole person was swallowed up by the flames. After a few breaths, he turned into a pool of black ash. In a flash, the whole field are trapped in the extreme silence. All people are like watching ghosts, staring at Yi Tian. Are you a god or a ghost? Yuan Chang's hand holding the long knife was shaking at the moment, and his voice was dry and trembling. He is a mountain man, but he has never seen such a strange method of making a fireball out of thin air with such great lethality. Fire the leaf day is indifferent, not language. Hand forward once more a wave. When Yuan Chang heard these two words, he didn't have any hesitation. He turned around and wanted to run down the mountain. But Yuan Chang's speed is faster than Yi Tian's. After the fireball was formed, it flew away like eyes. It hit Yuan Chang heavily. After a howl, it burned him to powder. Fang Zhong has seen the immortal grandfather. Fang Zhong didn't expect that the situation that he thought he would die would be resolved in this way. Without saying a word, he knelt down on the ground and kowtowed to Yi Tian. Immortal grandfather? When Yi Tian heard this, he could not help but feel helpless. In fact, what he is using now is nothing more than the most superficial and easy-to-use 5 elements Taoist art. However, he did not expect that he was regarded as an immortal twice in succession. No need. Yi Tian waved his hand casually, and after indicating that Fang Zhong didn't need so many gifts, he glanced at him and said, "Are you here to pick the dewflower?" Immortal grandfather, do you even know this? Fang Zhong hears the sound and looks at Yi Tian's eyes. He is more and more respectful, like ghosts. How dare he get up? Even now, he doubts whether Yi Tian is the legendary mountain god. Not only do I know that, I know where the dewdrops are. Yi Tian looks at Fang Zhong and laughs. Then he walks to the cliff waterfall in 3 or 2 steps. After a little hesitation, he carefully picks out 3 plants with light blue leaves, small translucent flowers and half dewdrop petals. He is the mountain god of Huanggang Mountain. Yes, he must be the mountain god. Fang Zhong looked at the scene and felt that there was a thunder in his head. You know, it took him a lot of effort to find the location of the flower. Even the Yuan family, whose family is in southern Fujian and regards Huanggang Mountain as a private property, did not know the exact location of the flower or even the existence of the flower. Can Yi Tian just come, unexpectedly found the dewflower, even skilled as if already knew the position of the dewflower? Not to mention Fang Zhong, even a young girl, if she had not followed Yi Tian all the way, she would have thought Yi Tian knew where the dewflower was. I want to save people with dewdrops, so I can't give them to you. But I can meet one of your requirements. At this time, Yi Tian picked the dewflower, carefully wrapped it with tree bark, put it into the backpack, and then looked at Fang Zhongdao. Although Yi Tian's ability to take all the 3 dewflowers away, Fang Zhong can't say anything. But the people who collect the herbs live by the herbs, and Fang Zhong has just been able to help them resist Yuan Ming's hidden weapon. It can be seen that Yi Tian's heart is not bad. Naturally, Yi Tian can't treat such a good man badly, so he has to satisfy his request. Take it, Master Mountain God. I have absolutely nothing to say. Fang Zhong hears the sound and kowtows a few rings to Yi Tian in a hurry. I'm not a mountain god. Like you, I'm human. Yi Tian can't help laughing and crying when he hears this. Don't make fun of me, Master Mountain God. Fang Zhong looks at Yi Tian respectfully and shakes his head repeatedly. I'm the same as you. I'm a herbalist, but I'm a little better at herbalism and cultivation than you. Yi Tian sighed helplessly, reached out his hand and patted Fang Zhong's shoulder. After he was sure that he was also a living person, he said, I never do what I owe others. Let's say, what do you want? It turns out that he is really human. Fang Zhong feels the strength and temperature of Yi Tian's palm on his shoulder, and finally determines that Yi Tian is a living person just like him. But even so, Fang Zhong's awe of Yi Tian, instead of decreasing, became stronger. At least, he has not seen any mountain people can have Yi Tian such means. I have one thing I want to ask for your help. Just now Yuan Ming said that my wife and children have been taken to Yuan's house. I hope you can help me save them. Fang Zhong knocked his head heavily towards Yi Tian and prayed. I can help you. Yi Tian looked at Fang Zhong, nodded, and said, but you have to tell me what happened to the Yuan family first. Because there is no cultivation sect in southern Fujian, the Yuan family is the first cultivation family in southern Fujian. It is said that the ancestors of the Yuan family are local-level masters. Over the years, they have been occupying the resources of the mountains and rivers in southern Fujian and treating them as private residences. Fang Zhong did not hesitate to tell Yi Tian about the Yuan family. There is a prefecture-level official. Yi Tian's eyes changed slightly. Since he returned to the earth, he has not contacted the mountain people at the prefecture level. He doesn't know the strength of each other. Compared with him at the third level of the cave, which one is better or weaker? Master, please help me save my wife and children. As long as you can help me, our party is willing to be a cow and a horse to repay my master. Fang Zhong said the general situation of Yuan family and kowtowed to Yi Tian. Since I have promised you to fulfill one of your wishes, I will not stand idly by. Yi Tian laughed, and the other side continued, as for being a cow and a horse, it's unnecessary. After the Yuan family's business is over, I really have a business to talk about with you. Now he's in the South China Sea, investigating his parents' affairs and paying attention to Ning Yao's whereabouts. It's inconvenient to travel. Therefore, he hopes to help him find the elixir, refine the elixir and improve his cultivation with the help of the herb collector in Fang Zhong. Of course, he will not treat Fang Zhong badly. However, he will not mention this matter to Fang Zhong now, so as not to let Fang Zhong think that he is deliberately manipulating him. Thank you, master, thank you. Fang Zhong was overjoyed and kowtowed his head to Yi Tian. Then he got up slowly. This guy is really a strange person. The young girl looks at Yi Tian strangely. In her opinion, with Yi Tian's skill and strength, after taking the dew flower, she can walk away. Fang Zhong doesn't dare to do anything, but Yi Tian doesn't do it. She even has to agree to a request from Fang Zhong to compensate him. In other words, Yi Tian's cultivation strength is like an immortal, but his reasoning is not like an immortal. Master, you said before that you were also a herbalist. Are you serious? On the way down the mountain, Fang Zhong stares at Yi Tian several times. He can't restrain his curiosity and asks. The cultivation of most herb gatherers is not high. Yi Tian is obviously an exception. Of course, otherwise, how could I find the location of the dew flower all at once? Not only that, but I've been a collector for a long time, and I've made some small fame. Yi Tian nodded with a smile, and his eyes showed the color of remembrance. At that time, when he first entered the Fengsuan spiritual realm and entered the blessed land of Qingming, his cultivation was not strong. He just sat up as a herbalist, and it was because he became a herbalist that he became the later emperor of Dan. It can be said that the collector is the beginning of Yi Tian's prosperity. This elder has been a herbalist for a long time, and he has made a great reputation? But Yi Tian didn't say that. Fortunately, the more he said that, the more confused he was in Fang Zhong's eyes. He has been working in this field for a long time, but he has never heard of such a master among the herb collectors. Moreover, looking at Yi Tian's age, it's obviously not in line with his words. This even made him wonder if this elder would be some kind of master. None of the three were idle people. The road down the mountain was smooth. On the way, they happened to meet the two wild boars again. As soon as they saw Yi Tian, they were like the king of Yen, with a group of cubs, wheezing. Turn around and run. They both saved my life. When I was chased by Yuan Ming and Yuan Chang before, they stopped Yuan Ming for me and kicked a baby to death by Yuan Ming. Fong Zhong looked at the back of the boar group and murmured with emotion. When Yi Tian heard this, he realized why the wild boar, whose character was not violent, suddenly started to hurt people. He thought it was because Yuan Ming and Yuan Chang kicked their cubs to death, so they vented their anger on human beings. More than an hour later, they arrived at the foot of the mountain and drove to southern Fujian. Minnan is just a county-level city. It's not a big place, but because of the coastal area, it develops very fast. There are many tall buildings and luxury cars on the road. The Yuan family had a strong influence in southern Fujian. They were not only the family of the mountain people, but also involved in many local businesses. The ancestral residence of Yuan family was built directly in the golden area of the city center, covering an area of 56 mu. Its shape is similar to that of the ancient residence. There are 2 lions rolling embroidered balls at the gate. On the gate, there is a word Yuan Fu with cursive script in gold sprinkled. It is full of vigor and gives people a sense of majestic majesty. In addition to the 2 stone lions, there are 2 uniformed security guards standing at the gate of the Yuan family's ancestral home. They stand straight, chin raised, and face proud, as if they could guard the gate for the Yuan family. It is a matter of great honor. Master Yi, shall we wait until after dark to enter Yuan's house, or? Fong Zhong looked at the majestic gate of the Yuan family, turned his head and looked at Yi Tian, swallowed his saliva, nervous and worried. Now that I'm here, I'll go in now. Yi Tian light smile, and then turned to look at the young girl, said, Mandala, if you don't want to go in, you can wait for us outside. Just down the mountain, Fong Zhong asked Yi Tian and the young girl's name. After hesitating for a moment, the young girl said a name, but the name was a pseudonym or code name. However, Mandala is charming, but it can anesthetize and poison others, which is quite similar to the character of young girls. You are not afraid. I have nothing to be afraid of. Mandala Road. With a faint smile, Yi Tian takes them to the gate of the Yuan family. What do you do? Stop. As soon as the 3 of them approached, the 2 security guards came quickly and stopped them. They asked in a cold voice. Yi Tian said nothing and continued to walk towards the gate. I don't understand people, do I? The 2 security guards heard, face a change, split hands toward Yi Tian's neck to grasp, to put him on the ground. Go away! Yi Tian sees this and raises his hand. The 2 security guards immediately fly upside down like broken kites and hit the stone lion next to them heavily, with blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. Go! Yi Tian looked back at Mandala and Fong Zhong, then continued to walk towards the gate. Who dares to break into my Yuan family? 3 people just walked into the gate, the outside security obviously hid after flying, pressed the alarm, several Yuan family members rushed over in a hurry, stopped in front of Yi Tian. 3 people. Fong Zhong. Did you come to my Yuan family to exchange the things you got in Huanggang Mountain? Immediately after that, the leader Yuan's family's eyes fell on Fong Zhong's body, showing some mockery. After a light sentence, he glanced at Fong Zhong and frowned. What about Yuan Ming and Yuan Chang? Master, this guy's name is Yuan Fong. He is the head of the Yuan family. The Yuan family is famous for their saber skills. He is good at using double-edged sabers. Among the people in the mountains, there is the name of double sabers take lives. Fong Zhong didn't answer the man's question, but lowered his voice and introduced to Yi Tian in a low voice. Fong Zhong, you are deaf. Can't you hear me? What about Yuan Ming and Yuan Chang? Yuan Fong ignored him, but muttered to Yi Tian, frowned and drank coldly. You should never see them again in your life. Hearing this, Yi Tian glanced at Yuan Fong and said, I don't want to waste time. Now you hand over Fong Zhong's family. I can take them away as if nothing has happened. You killed Yuan Ming and Yuan Chang. When Yuan Fong heard Yi Tian's words, he looked suddenly and looked at Yi Tian in disbelief. Looking at Yi Tian's attitude, it seems that he is not lying. But looking at Yi Tian, how could he be the opponent of Yuan Ming and Yuan Chang? So what? Can't I kill those who are responsible for themselves? Yi Tian smiles indifferently and looks at Yuan Fong. If you dare to kill Uncle Ming and Uncle Chang, let me help you understand how heavy you are. On hearing Yi Tian's words, a young man beside Yuan Fong couldn't stand at once. He looked at Yi Tian with a sneer. Then he stepped forward and hit Yi Tian heavily with a fist. This fist is very powerful. There should be no problem in breaking the stone. Xiaohun's fist is good. It's a bit of the true meaning of boxing. Haha, Xiaohun is the first person in the young generation of Yuan family. How can he be his opponent? Tiger father and tiger son, Xiaofang really got the lineage of his ancestors. Like the family owner, he dares to be the first of our Yuan family everywhere. Seeing the young man's blow, Yuan Fang's family members immediately smile and compliment Yuan Fang. When Yuan Fang heard these people praising his son, he couldn't help showing some color on his face, as if he had seen the picture of Yuan Hun's fist falling down and Yi Tian falling to the ground and spitting blood. In my eyes, Yuan family is a fart, not to mention you don't even have a few dollars, not even a cent. Yi Tian smiles indifferently. There is no fear in his eyes. When the young man's fist approaches him, he flies up and hits his chest. Bang! With a dull sound, the young man immediately flew upside down like a kite with broken line, and fell heavily on the rockery 3 meters away. Then he fell into the water, splashing with water. After a long time, he didn't get up, and he didn't know if the ghost had become a water ghost? How could that be? At the same time, the Yuan family members, who had been complimenting constantly before, looked at Yi Tian in disbelief with a stiff smile on their face. Yuan Hun is the first person of the Yuan family's younger generation, and he is the best among them even if he is put in the mountain sect. But this is what he is. In front of Yi Tian, who seems to be his peers, he doesn't even have the power to fight. He just kicks and gets kicked away. Did you really kill Yuan Ming and Yuan Chang? More than these people, Yuan's eyes sank when he looked at his son whose life and death were uncertain. He immediately bloomed and said, "Dare to hurt my son, I'll let you pay for it with your life." Before you say that, I suggest you think about whether you have this weight. Yi Tian casually looked at Yuan Fang with an indifferent look. You want to die? Where did Yuan Fang think that Yi Tian didn't even pay attention to him? His anger rose in his heart. He stretched out his hand to the side and took 2 long swords. One was as fast as the other. It has to be said that there is a certain way for Yuan to become the head of the Yuan family. The saber technique is fast, just like thunder rushing to the rain. If you are from Leisurely Mountain, I'm afraid you can't hold on to such a fierce and fast saber technique for a few times, and you will be killed by one knife. But unfortunately, what Yuan Fang is facing now is not the mountain people he usually meets, but Yi Tian. The wind is coming. When the light of the sword comes, Yi Tian's face doesn't have any worry, such as Tianxian in his mouth. When he makes a cold voice, he gently waves his hand forward. Ah, I laugh to death. Who does this guy think he is? He wants to defeat the master with a wave of his hand? The things that don't know how to live or die dare to be so big in front of Shuangdao Yuan Fang. Seeing Yi Tian's action, Yuan's family laughed wildly. They only felt that Yi Tian wanted to defeat Yuan Fang with a wave of his hand. Yuan Fang's action was ridiculous to the extreme. Who? But the next second, with the direction of Yi Tian's hand waving forward, the change suddenly appeared. There was no wind between heaven and earth, but now there was a sharp wind. Moreover, as soon as the wind appears, it makes people feel like being criticized, as if the wind is as strong as a knife. What is this? It's the wind or a knife. Then, when a clear wind blade suddenly appeared in the void, the smile on the Yuan family's face suddenly solidified, and their eyes were wide open. In the fundus of their eyes, there was a strong color of disbelief. Kung! Kung! At this time, the wind blade and the 2 long knives in Yuan Fang's hands hit each other heavily. Although the wind is invisible, Yuan Fang's long sword has been tempered a lot, but the amazing thing is that when the wind blade hits the long sword, it is like a real magic weapon collision, with Mars everywhere. Click! Click! In a moment, the long sword in Yuan Fang's hand broke into 2 pieces and fell to the ground. Whoa! Not only that, after cutting off the long sword in Yuan Fang's hand, the wind blade didn't have any delay, and then it hit Yuan Fang's right shoulder heavily. With the sound of a sharp blade into the flesh, Yuan Fang's right arm was cut to the ground shoulder to shoulder, and blood gushed. Ah, this terrible injury, Yuan Fang only had time to howl, people will faint on the ground, shoulder overflow of blood, soon the ground died into a pool of blood. In this case, Yuan Fang would not die if he died, but in the future, the nickname of Xuangdao would only become one-armed Dao. This. You. Yuan family's face, at the moment, cannot see any more complacency, only a strong sense of panic. Eyes look at Yi Tianshi, the kind of eyes, such as looking at ghosts. They've never seen anything so weird and terrifying. The wind can also cut off the blade, and the wind can also cut off the shoulder to shoulder besides ghosts and gods, who can use such means. Release Fang Zhong's family. The Leaf Day indifferently toward Yuan family swept an eye, light way. The rest of the Yuan family looked at each other, shivered and could hardly say a word. Who dared to make so much noise in my Yuan family? But just then, along the courtyard behind Yuan's house, a figure suddenly jumped up, stepped on the wall, and fell lightly in front of Yi Tian. This is an old man with white hair, but his face is as red as a child. One stop there, it's a bit of a fairyland, and it looks like a master. Prefecture-level atmosphere. This old man is the ancestor of Yuan family. Yi Tian sweeps toward the old man, and immediately judges his identity by the breath from him. Laozu. As soon as I saw the ancestors of the Yuan family, the lost Yuan family members immediately found the backbone and bowed themselves to salute. Fang Hun The ancestors of the Yuan family ignored these Yuan family members and swept toward the ground. When they saw that Yuan Fang had broken his arm and Yuan Han didn't know his life or death in the pool, their eyes suddenly turned cold and swept toward Yi Tian, saying coldly, "Are you doing all this? Can only you Yuan family capture other people's wives and children? Others can't do it to you Yuan family?" Yi Tian is unafraid and looks at the Yuan family's ancestors, light way. He wanted to know what level of his cave was compared with the people on the mountain. If the prefecture-level mountain people are not his opponents, then deal with Tianmen, you can grasp a few more points. Take Fanger and Hunter to heal. The ancestor of the Yuan family told the Yuan family around him. Then he looked at Yi Tian coldly and said, "Boy, do you think that if you defeat Fanger and Hunter, you can run rampant in our Yuan family? I tell you, you are so naive. The prefecture level is a watershed for the people in the mountain. You are a boy who doesn't have the same hair. You don't know how powerful the prefecture level is. And I've honed myself on the line of death all these years. I've killed countless people. My fighting skills are unparalleled. If you are wise, kneel down now, kowtow to my Yuan family and apologize, then break your arms and discard your accomplishments. I can consider leaving you a way to live. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." Yi Tian was a little impatient. He glanced at Yuan's ancestors and said, "If you want to be impolite, you should be impolite. What can you do with so much nonsense? A prefecture level can blow like this." Yi Tian once was the Jade Pu boundary matter, if said, that was not to frighten him to pee. The Yuan family was shocked. This guy is so arrogant in front of the Yuan family's ancestors. Is he too conceited? Boy, you want to die. The ancestors of the Yuan family also felt that they had been humiliated and were furious. The wind is coming. Yi Tianzhen didn't want to pay more attention to the Yuan family's ancestors. He gently waved his hand forward, and the wind blade suddenly formed and chopped him off. This is the 5-element magic. Are you the prefecture level late stage? As soon as Yuan's ancestors saw the wind blade, their eyes immediately looked startled and made a sound. The mountain people in the later stage of prefecture level can also perform the 5 elements Taoist art? Hearing this, Yi Tian's eyes can't help changing slightly. This is the first time that he has seen someone recognize the 5 elements Taoism. It seems that the mountain people after the prefecture level are really some extraordinary, and they have already touched the threshold of cultivation. However, the only 5 elements of Taoism, said to be 5 elements of magic. He doesn't know whether he should say that these mountain people are frogs in the well, short-sighted or arrogant. Prefecture level later stage? Hearing this, Fang Zhengyi and Yuan's family all look at Yi Tian in amazement. It's hard to believe that he seems to have such profound accomplishments at a young age. It's strange. You're not right in the breath of the 5 elements. Let me come here for a while. At this time, Yuan's ancestors such as aware of something, a change of vision, clenched fists, leaping in the air, a blow to the blade of Yi Tian. On the fist, there was a layer of strange blood light. It looked terrible. Bang! When it was late, when it was fast, the old ancestor of the Yuan family's fist fell behind the wind blade. The cool and swift wind blade was smashed into pieces by the red light of his fist. The old ancestor is invincible. Ha ha ha, boy, now you know my Yuan family is very good. Seeing this, Yuan family members see that Yi Tian's fear disappears. Instead, they are filled with schadenfreude. It seems that they have already seen the picture of Yi Tian being captured by his ancestors. The appearance of this scene, see the square center head clattering, there is a kind of bad feeling. Not to mention Fong Zhong, even Yi Tian's eyes flickered slightly. He did not expect that Yuan's ancestors could smash the wind blade with a single blow. However, did not expect to return, but in his heart, but not half of fear. Sure enough, you are not in the late stage of prefecture level. Yuan's ancestor smashed the wind blade with a fist. After landing steadily, he stared at Yi Tian as if he saw a baby. His eyes were shining, and he said, "It's not the later stage of prefecture level, but it can show the 5-element magic." Yeah, it seems that the old man of heaven is so good that he sent you such a treasure. Hand over the secret book of your cultivation, and I will spare you from death. Yuan's ancestors looked at Yi Tian with awe-inspiring eyes, full of greed and covet. He has never heard of such a thing that he can perform the 5-element magic when he is not a prefecture level later cultivation. But there is no doubt that he can perform the 5-element magic when he is not a prefecture level later cultivation, which shows the high level of the secret script. In such a situation, how can we not let Yuan's ancestors have a feeling of finding treasure? Even he felt that if he could get such a secret script, not only his accomplishments could be greatly improved, but also the Yuan family could be promoted to a higher level, and even the leader Qianluan might not be impossible. There's too much of your nonsense. If you want my secret script, I suggest you consider whether you can have life to take it first. Yi Tian smiles indifferently and looks at Yuan's ancestors calmly. I'll see if you can continue to be so arrogant when I cut off your limbs and slowly torture you. Yuan's ancestor looked at Yi Tian coldly, then extended his hand to the side, and said in a deep voice, "Here comes the knife." As soon as the words fell, the Yuan family quickly handed a long sword with blood-colored veins to the Yuan family's ancestors. You can't get out of Yuan's today. Yuan's ancestors took the long sword and gently shook his hand. Along his body, a strange halo of blood color appeared immediately. With the appearance of the halo, his whole breath became stronger and stronger. Just for a short time, it makes people feel that he is like a true god coming to the world, so that everyone can only look up. Fong Zhong shivered and looked at the scene in horror. He knew that Yuan's ancestors were very strong, but he didn't expect to be so strong. At this moment, he even regretted that he should not drag Yi Tian into the dangerous mire. As for Mandala, in addition to fear, more is the strong yearning that cannot be concealed. What she saw and heard today has completely overturned her understanding of the world in the past 20 years. She thought she was very strong, but in front of Yi Tian and Yuan's ancestors, she found that her former self was ridiculous. In front of these real strong people, she was just like a mole ant. She is eager to be as strong as these people. Kill the old ancestor of the Yuan family gave a loud drink, jumped up, and with a long knife, he chopped heavily at Yi Tian. Before this knife was wielded along the blade, there was a bloody blade flickering. It was not only piercing, but also shocking. This feeling makes people feel that even a piece of alloy steel plate should be waved in half before the blade. The wind is coming. Yi Tian was not afraid at all. He raised his hands lightly. The wind blade suddenly came to attack the Yuan family. Boy, your strength is not as strong as that of the prefecture level later stage. These 5 elements are weak and ridiculous. The Yuan family's ancestors sneered and waved the long blood-grained sword in their hands, rolling to the wind blade. Kong! 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 For a moment, the sound of the golden iron cross was heard everywhere, and the wind blades were cut into pieces directly under the flashing long sword, which could not cause any substantial harm to the Yuan family ancestors. What's more, the long sword of Yuan's ancestors is really a treasure. The wind blade is so sharp, but when they collide, there is not even a big gap on the blade. Boy, hand over the secret script, I will spare you from death. The ancestors of the Yuan family kept approaching and sneered. Although he broke the wind blade from Yi Tian, it was not as easy as he showed. The tiger's mouth was still a little sore and even cracked. But the more powerful Yi Tian is, the more happy he is. Because, as long as you can get this secret script, doesn't it mean that if Yi Tian's cultivation is a little higher than Yi Tian's, his 5-element magic will be more powerful? The wind is coming. Yi Tian didn't talk any more nonsense about Yuan's ancestors. He raised his hands lightly, swept out the wind blade one by one, and attacked and stabbed Yuan's ancestors. Ha ha ha, it's useless for me. I'll spare you thousands of wind blades. I'll only break them with one knife. Moreover, with your strength, how many times can you perform the 5 elements fairy art? Yuan's ancestors cut the wind blade one by one. In a moment, they reached Yi Tian. Boy, first break your arm, revenge for my son, and then slowly take out the secret script from your mouth. After Yuan's ancestor approached Yi Tian's body, his eyes flashed with cold light, and Yang Dao chopped Yi Tian's right arm. If you want to get my secret script, you should have no chance in your life. But at this time, has been indifferent to the leaf day, the corner of the mouth suddenly raised a strange arc. This boy, what is he going to do? Seeing the smile on Yi Tian's face, Yuan's ancestors suddenly sank in their heart, with a kind of extremely bad feeling. Whoa! Almost at the same time when the idea of Yuan's ancestors came into being, he suddenly felt that an extremely strong wind suddenly hit his back. The speed of the strong wind was extremely fast. He just wanted to turn around and wave his sword, but before he had time to make any movement, he felt a sudden chill in his chest and something came straight in from his back heart. Yuan's grandfather looked down in disbelief. As far as he could see, there was a small hole in his chest, spraying scarlet blood. And what made him feel even more incredible was that the branch sticking out of the blood hole was actually a green branch. When he turned his head hard to look at it, the branch turned out to be the weeping willow tree with green silk tapers not far behind him. However, the weeping willow is delicate and tender, just like this branch, it is as fierce as a javelin. How could that be? Yuan family's ancestors' heart palpitating, looking at Yi Tian, incredibly difficult way. Who told you that I can only use what you call the 5 elements magic? Yi Tian's face at the moment, also some not healthy pale, indifferent after a smile, light way. After discovering that the wind blade had no effect on Yuan's ancestors, Yi Tian changed his mind and decided to find a new way. As far as he thought, the most effective way was to give Yuan's ancestors a surprise and fatal blow with other Taoist skills. Therefore, he chose the Royal Military Taoist art. This skill can be used to control the weapon blade in a long distance with the help of mana. It is not limited to gold and iron objects. If you use this skill, you can kill the enemy. However, compared with the 5 elements Taoist art, the cost of mana of this Royal Military Taoist art is several times higher. In order to paralyze the Yuan family's ancestors, Yi Tian has been exerting his wind blade continuously, which has already consumed some energy. At the moment, he is exerting his martial arts. He feels that his mana is almost exhausted. I'm not willing to. Yuan's ancestors look at Yi Tian with a face full of unwilling color. Their life experience, like a movie version, slowly flashes by. In the past, with his own strength, he made the Yuan family become a family of cultivation, and made the Yuan family become the existence of the local emperor of southern Fujian, occupying all the cultivation resources in the surrounding mountains and forests. All these years, he has spent a lot of effort in his life, but who can imagine that today, he died in the hands of a boy who, in his opinion, didn't have the same hair. He wanted to raise his head to the sky and roar, but the power of life had quickly dissipated like running water, and he could not exert any strength, so he collapsed slowly and died. From behind him, the weeping willow twigs, blood flashing, along the leaves, drop by drop crystal clear blood beads. At this moment, the huge Yuan family was dead, only the breath of people trying to suppress. Everyone's eyes are gathered in the face of calm young people, eyes full of strong shock. Willow branches can also kill people. In the hearts of all Yuan family members, they are constantly repeating this question. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they would not believe it, even if others said it too much. But now, this fact is like iron in front of them. Lao Tzu is dead. Then, they suddenly thought of a more terrible thing. The ancestor of the Yuan family is the giant of the Yuan family. When he dies, the sky of the Yuan family will collapse and the earth will sink. So what are they going to do next? Surrender, or die? And at this time, Yi Tian looked around the Yuan family members in the hospital, word by word, light way. Master, we know we are wrong. Please forgive us. Master, we'll invite Fong Zhong's wife and children here. Please don't kill us. Without any hesitation, the Yuan family immediately prostrate and kneel down in front of Yi Tian, shivering and shivering all over. Some of them are timid. Now they are scared out of tears. Bring Fong Zhong's family here. After glancing at the Yuan family, Yi Tian said, "You Yuan family should have a treasure house. Take me to have a look." The Yuan family is a family of cultivation, and has been in southern Fujian for so many years. Yi Tian thinks that there may be something he needs to improve his cultivation in the Yuan family treasure house. He wants to dig out the inside information of Yuan family. The Yuan family's prostrate people heard Yi Tian's words, and a look of panic and fear flashed in their eyes. They shrank on the ground, and no one dared to speak for a long time. We should know that the inside information of the treasure house is the capital for them to improve their accomplishments in the future, and it is also the key for the Yuan family to make a comeback. If the treasure house is looted by Yi Tian, the Yuan family, who lost the protection of his ancestors, will be completely destroyed. Why, are you going to let me do it myself and ask you to show me the way? Yi Tianware cannot know Yuan family these people's mind, toward them after sweeping an eye, light way. I dare not. Fong Zhong's wife and children are in the warehouse. We'll take you there. These people in Yuan's family are not fools. How can they not know that Yi Tian said please, I'm afraid to kill one or two of them? With the intention of making a warning to others, he immediately got up and walked forward with trembling. Lead the way. When Yi Tian looks at him, he smiles at the corners of his mouth and picks his toes. He puts the long Dao of Yuan's ancestors into his hand and looks at the material of the long Dao as he walks. Blood-grained steel. Yi Tian stares at the blood-colored veins on the long sword, then reaches out his hand and flicks it gently. When he hears the clear "you" sound like knocking on the jade, he can't help but flash a surprise at the bottom of his eyes. Blood-grained steel is an excellent material for refining weapons. Even if it is placed in the square-inch spirit field, it is one of the indispensable materials for refining spirit soldiers. As long as the blade is melted and recast with the flying sword pieces, he should have a 50% chance to have a spirit soldier. Yi Tian, who used to be the emperor of Dan, was not even a top-level magic weapon, let alone a lingbing. But today is different from the past. In today's earth, let alone a magic weapon, it is a fluke to have a spirit weapon. Moreover, with his current cultivation, even if he was given a semi-immortal soldier, he would not be able to use it. The blade of lingbing is just right. It's a big deal. In the future, with the improvement of cultivation, we will gradually upgrade the lingbing to a magic weapon. If possible, we can upgrade the flying sword fragment to the level of the semi-immortal soldier in the past. A moment later, the Yuan family took Yi Tian to a rockery in the backyard. After they clapped on the rockery a few times, the huge rockery slowly twisted, revealing a dark tunnel. Master, please come inside. Although the Yuan family did not want to, they could only cry and bring Yi Tian into the basement. Hiss. As soon as the mandala walked into the warehouse with Yi Tian, he took a breath of cold air and showed envy and intoxication in his eyes. In this warehouse, there are rows of shelves full of all kinds of cold weapons, a lot of ancient books, a lot of glittering gold bars, some antique paintings, jewelry, and jade that look extremely valuable. Of course, there are also some herbs that are rarely seen in the outside world. Such a place is definitely a well-deserved treasure house. Han 1. Xiaoxin Fangzhong looks around and runs to a woman and a child tied in the middle of the treasure house. He unties the ropes on them. After asking questions, he leads them by the hand and walks to Yi Tian. All three of them fall on their knees and kowtow to Yi Tian respectfully. Master Yi, Fangzhong remembers your great kindness in saving the 3 members of our family. From now on, you will be the master of our family. If you have anything to do, Fang Zhong will do whatever it takes. Next, Fang Zhong raises his head and looks at Yi Tian sullenly with tears in his eyes. He knew that without Yi Tian, even if he told the Yuan family about the dewflower on Huanggang Mountain, he would not be able to get his wife and children back. Even the Yuan family may use the lives of his wife and children to coerce him into helping the Yuan family pick the elixir without any reward. But fortunately, he met Yi Tian. Get up, you don't have to. But wait a minute. I do have a business to talk with you. Yi Tian waved his hand, indicating that Fang Zhong didn't need so many gifts. You Yuan family's treasure house, only these ordinary things? Closely following, Yi Tian turns his head to look at a Yuan family who is trembling, Light Wei. Ordinary things? Mandala heard Yi Tian's words, the corners of her mouth twitched a few times. She is a person with a lot of insight. Not to mention the gold bars in the warehouse, the antiques, calligraphy and paintings, jade and jewelry alone are worth at least 20 million or 30 million, even if they can't be said to be priceless. And the weapons in this room are extremely excellent. If you take out any of them, you can become the target of cold weapons enthusiasts. If these precious things are ordinary, there will be no precious things in the world. But the next second, Mandala's eyes will show the color of enlightenment. The things here are really valuable, but what Yi Tian pursues is not money, but cultivation strength. In the face of absolute power, no matter how rich you are, no matter how powerful you are, with one blow, everything will be overturned. Compared with the power of controlling life and death, these worldly objects of money are indeed ordinary, and can't be more ordinary, or even rubbish. Power. I also want to have a person like him, with his powerful power. Only in this way can we get rid of everything we are facing now. Thinking of this, Mandala stares at Yi Tian's back, and suddenly an idea rises in his heart. Master, all the things of the Yuan family are really here. You can take all the things here. I only hope you can spare our Yuan family. Hearing the news, the Yuan family immediately bowed their bodies and said yes. Is it? Hearing the sound, Yi Tian looks at the Yuan family with a smile, then his mind suddenly spreads and covers the whole basement. The next second, his mind immediately sensed that there was a big space behind the wall on the left. It is obvious that the Yuan family is lucky and wants to muddle through. Master, what I said is true. All the things of the Yuan family are really here. I absolutely didn't cheat you. The Yuan family didn't know that Yi Tian's mind was powerful. They thought they could hide it from the world and bow to Yi Tian. Is it? With a cold smile, Yi Tian clenched the long bloody steel knife and slashed it toward the left wall of the basement. Boom! As soon as the knife fell, the wall roared and collapsed, revealing a small dark room. The furnishings in this treasure house are exactly the same as those in this treasure house, with several wooden frames. How did he find out that the Yuan family lied to him and knew the location of the dark room? The appearance of this scene makes everyone's eyes focus on Yi Tian. Deep in everyone's eyes, they are deeply shocked and puzzled. Especially the Yuan family who has just told Yi Tianbao that there is only one room in the library, their bodies are shaking like chaff. Looking at Yi Tian, they are like ghosts and gods. They open their mouths and want to explain, but they can't say a complete word. You know, the secret room of the Yuan family's treasure house is very secret, and no one knows it except the children of the Yuan family who are very close to him. And he just in order not to let Yi Tian find clues, but also did not dare to look to the location of the secret room. He really can't understand. Under such circumstances, how did Yi Tian discover the secret of the secret room? He can't say that this guy's eyes can see the situation inside through the wall? I hate being cheated. With a cold smile and a backhand slap, Yi Tian hit the Yuan family's Dantian heavily. While destroying his cultivation, he also knocked him back a meter away and fell to the ground, coughing up blood. But let me see what good things your Yuan family has saved these years. Yi Tian glanced coldly at the Yuan family and strode into the secret room along the gap of the collapsed wall. It's over this time, the Yuan family is completely over, and there is no possibility of turning over. Looking at Yi Tian's back, the Yuan family's face is full of bitterness. This secret room is the real heritage of the Yuan family. If the things in the secret room are taken away by Yi Tian, then the Yuan family will start all over again. It's just, where are they going to look for a Yuan family son who can compare with their ancestors? Although Fang Zhong was curious about what was in the secret room, he didn't follow him. Instead, he stood outside respectfully with his wife and children. Fang Zhong, who had planned to follow him to see the mandala, could only give up. Moonflower. Rhinoceros bloodroot. Meteorite iron. Yi Tian turns around in the secret room, and his face is full of joy. The moonflower and rhinoceros bloodroot are both excellent things for refining pills, which are of great benefit to his cultivation. As for meteorite iron, like blood grain steel, they are indispensable materials for refining spirit soldiers. With this, Yi Tian has the assurance of refining a spirit weapon. There are 15 Huangling pills, 5 Shenling pills and 1 Diling pill. The Yuan family has such a rich foundation, such as Taiyi's so-called 3 schools and 6 schools. How rich is the family base? This time harvest, let leaf day corners of the mouth all couldn't help showing a smile. Although he can't take these pills, he can give them to Shi Xiong and Fang Zhong to improve his cultivation, or exchange them with some mountain people for the elixir he needs. As for the secret books on the wooden frame, Yi Tian was not interested after reading them. In his opinion, these secret scripts are all out of fashion skills. If you look at them a few more times, you will be defiling your own eyes. Ha! When Yi Tian came to the last wooden frame, his eyes suddenly changed and he looked at a brocade box on the wooden frame. From the box, he felt a strange fluctuation of spiritual power. This is... Yi Tian opened the brocade box and saw a white jade ring in it. His face suddenly showed the color of ecstasy. He took the white jade ring into his hand and murmured, "Storage ring." Storage ring, as the name suggests, is a ring that can store things. According to Yi Tian's idea, the reason why the Yuan family put the ring in the brocade box and put it on the wooden frame is that they should have noticed the fluctuation of the ring's spiritual power. But even the ancestors of the Yuan family were laymen who did not master Taoism and only stepped on the threshold of cultivation, so they survived. But, Yuan family, these people how all can't think of, this thing is actually cheap. Yi Tian in the end. Unfortunately, some of them are small. Yi Tian puts on the ring and opens the storage ring. After searching inside, his eyes show some loss. The space in this storage ring is only about 2 feet square. It is placed in the square-inch spiritual realm, which belongs to the lowest level. In the past, his storage ring in the square-inch spiritual realm was called the close thing. Although the close thing is small, it can hold the end of the world. It's about 1,000 miles away. It can not only cultivate the elixir, but also feed the spirit beast. It's no problem to load thousands of people into it. However, although the space in this ring is small, it's precious to me now. It can help me a lot. With this ring, if I come across that kind of elixir which is easy to rot in the future, after picking it, I can put it into the ring for preservation. Even if it has been put for more than 100 years, the elixir will not rot, and there will not be any loss of medicine. Yi Tian turns the storage ring for a while. After he is satisfied with the smile, he makes a mental move and collects all the other things in the secret room except the classics into the ring. Now, there are some practitioners. Yi Tian looked around with a satisfied smile. Then he came out of the secret room, shook the ring to the Yuan family, and said, "Where did you Yuan family get this thing?" In Yuan's class, there is no ability to refine storage ring, so it should be obtained by chance. The storage ring has entered the threshold of cultivation. He wants to see if there will be a Dan stove where the Yuan family gets the ring. If there is one, he can no longer use pressure cooker and gas stove to make pills. This ring was found by Laozu in Feilai Peak. According to him, he met a ghost striking a wall there. It was a valley. He turned around for 3 days and nights before he came out. Then he found this ring on the ground of the valley. The Yuan family at the moment where dare to hide anything from Yi Tian, will tell the whole story. The ghost hit the wall? I'm afraid I'd met the field array of the lost type. When Yi Tian heard the sound, he could not help but move slightly in his heart. You know, most of the array that puzzles people's sense of direction and trace is arranged around the cave by some monks after they have opened the cave, in order to avoid intruders and wild animals. If we can find a cave for the practitioner, maybe there will be the Dan furnace he needs. Just wait for a moment. If there is a field array to stop you, you can't break through the mountain, and the cave won't walk away. It's not too late to explore until everything is behind. But a moment later, Tian shook his head and put down the idea of going to Filafing immediately. Falai Peak is far away from Linen. If you want to go there, you can't do it every 4 or 5 days. Moreover, it's a troublesome job to crack the field array. With his current cultivation, it takes 10 days and a half months to be simpler. If it's more difficult, it's possible to take a year. Now, Lu Hua is waiting for his treatment, and the people of Taiman who killed his parents will go to Nanhai at any time. What's more, Ning Yao is also suspected to be in Nanhai City. He really can't leave these behind and go to Filafing for such a long time. Take a look at the rest for yourself, and take whatever you need. After that, Tian didn't say anything more politely. He turned his mind and put the gold bars, herbs, antiques, calligraphy and paintings, jade and jewelry on the outer shelf into the storage ring. After that, he and Mandala said. Although most of the things in the warehouse had been taken away by him, the rest were things he didn't like. However, his vision is so high that what he thinks of as a leisure thing may be a rare good thing in Fangjong Mandala's view. Where did he change those things on the shelf? It's just that the picture of Tian putting these things into the storage ring falls into the eyes of Fangjong Mandala. It's too weird. They just stare at Tian and scan the sky. They want to know where Tian put those things, but they forget to respond to him. It's not only the two of them, but also the Yuan family. They feel that Tian's methods are unpredictable. Why, don't you look at these things? Tian sees these two people all have no reaction, not from some surprised saw them 2 eyes. I'm afraid. I'm just a little distracted because your method is too strange. Thank you. Fangjong hears the sound, and then wakes up. He bows to Tian in a hurry, and then goes to the wooden frame. It seems that when using the storage ring in the future, we should pay a little attention to avoid shocking the world. Hearing this, Tian couldn't help shaking his head with a bitter smile. He used to use this kind of thing in the square-inch spirit realm, but he forgot that on Earth, things like storage rings only exist in legends. Master, I'll choose these 2 weapons. With them, it will be much more convenient for me to go into the mountain to collect herbs. Soon, Fangjong turned back. He had an iron claw made of fine steel in his hand, and another one made into an umbrella, which could not only keep out the wind and rain, but also a few sharp blade paratroopers along the edge of the umbrella with a twist. This mysterious elixir is for you. If you break through the mysterious level as soon as possible, you will have more guarantee when you enter the mountain. Tian nods with a smile. He takes out a mysterious elixir from the storage ring and throws it to Fangjong. His impression on the other side was really good, not only because he had been a herb gatherer, but because he was not only kind but also contented, worthy of a high look. This girl wants to practice? When Tianmu light falls on Mandala, she finds that she is holding a pile of cultivation secrets, and her mouth can't help showing a playful smile. It seems that I have brought a great impact on this girl. However, with so many cultivation secrets, is she not afraid to chew too much? Tian glanced at Mandala with a smile, but he didn't break it. Mandala is different from Fangjong. She not only has unknown origin and stories, but also has a strong vigilance against herself. If it wasn't for the reason of curiosity, Tian wouldn't let the girl follow him at all. Since you don't want these weapons, I'll take them too. Seeing that both Mandala and Fangjong didn't want to pick up weapons, Tian made a mental move and put all the refined weapons in Yuan's treasure house into his storage ring. Although the grade of these weapons, let alone spirit soldiers, can't even touch the edge of the heavy weapons, it's better to put them away when you meet people on the mountain who are agreeable to you. It's better to take them for human relations or exchange them for something. Let's go. After everything is cleared up, Tian looks at Mandala and Fangjong, and then takes them away. Yuan family people wait until Tian and others leave. Looking at the empty treasure house, they feel as if they are dead. Tian's trip emptied the Yuan family's accumulated heritage over the past few decades. The Yuan family, up and down, will never have any chance to turn over in this life. But their hearts were as dead as ashes, but there was no hatred in their hearts. It's not that they don't want to hate, it's that they dare not. Revenge to Tian. Just think about it. If you really want to do it, the fate of Laozu is already there. Mr. Yi, you told me that there is a business to discuss with me. I don't know what it is. After leaving the Yuan family, Feng Zhong looked at Yi Tian and said respectfully. It's very simple. I want you to be my full-time herb collector. From now on, you will only collect miraculous herbs for me. Yi Tian smiles and says slowly. It takes time and effort to collect the elixir, and it is extremely difficult to collect the elixir only by individuals. When he was in Fengsuan spiritual realm, there were nearly 10,000 people in Qingming blessed land who specially served him, and their footprints covered every corner of many stars in the spiritual realm. Today, although he can't compare with when he was Emperor Dan, he can save a lot of time by having a herbalist to help him. I'm willing to die for you. Feng Zhong didn't have any hesitation, and hurriedly said respectfully to Yi Tiangong. You don't have to die. You have a wife and a child. Who will take care of them if you die for me? Yi Tian shook his head with a smile, and then said, Don't worry, I won't let you do it for nothing. No matter what kind of elixir you collect or what kind of rare elixir you hear, I will pay you the equivalent reward, which can be the elixir you need urgently, weapons or other things. Thank you, master. Feng Zhong was overjoyed and bowed to Yi Tian. Just from the move that Yi Tiangang gave him Zuanlingdan, he knew that Yi Tian was definitely not a mean person and would not treat him badly. Moreover, serving Yi Tian alone can also save him a lot of energy, so that he won't have to worry about whether the other party will kill and seize the treasure when dealing with others. Do you know where there are Dan stoves for sale? Yi Tian nods and asks Feng Zhong. Master, can you still refine pills? Feng Zhong is surprised and looks at Yi Tian inconceivably. A little bit. Yi Tian nodded modestly. The way of Dan is hard. Even if you know something about it, it's already very hard. Feng Zhong only thinks that Yi Tian is telling the truth, and he can't help but sigh. When Yi Tian heard this, he couldn't help crying and laughing. If he, as the Emperor of Dan, only knows a little about alchemy, I'm afraid there will be no one on the earth who knows about alchemy. At this time, Feng Zhong continued, there are very few people who know how to refine the Dan furnace. Even among the people in the mountains, it's very rare to sell the Dan furnace. As far as I know, only Qingming sect has many Dan furnaces, but I haven't heard that they have a precedent to sell the Dan furnace. So it is. Yi Tian was surprised to hear this, but he was not surprised. Dan furnace not only needs strong fire resistance, but also needs to have a certain spiritual ability. In line with these two characteristics of the material, the most common, it is only one kind of amethyst. But even amethyst is not very common in Fengsuan Lingyu, let alone the earth. You can settle down your wife and children and help me go to Filafing. You don't need to do anything. Just help me to see if there are people on the mountain exploring something there. After Leaf Day is silent for a while, the other side and admonish away. Since we can't buy the Dan stove, and we can't get it from Qingmingzong, we can only continue to place our hope on the suspected Dan stove in Filafing. Although Yi Tian can't go to Feilai Peak for the time being, he doesn't want to be taken by other mountain people. Yes, I'll go to Filafing as soon as I settle down my wife and children. Feng Zhong nodded respectfully at once. Please, I'll give you another magic pill when the matter is settled. Yi Tian nodded with a smile and said politely. Feng Zhong was overjoyed when he heard the words. 2 mysterious elixirs were enough for him to break through the mysterious level. Without any hesitation, he immediately said thanks to Yi Tianlian, and then left with his wife and children. Along the way, Feng Zhong only felt that everything he had experienced today was like a dream. But he knew that this time, he was afraid to meet the noble people in his life, and his life trajectory might have to change dramatically because of this change. What are you going to do? When will you tell me what happened to you? After seeing Feng Zhong off, Yi Tian glances at Mandala and says with a smile. Mandala stares at Yi Tian, her eyes flicker and drift away, and finally turns her head to one side. Since you don't want to say it, I'll wait, but in my opinion, it shouldn't be too long. Yi Tian sees Mandala's expression, smiles lightly, light way. According to his judgment from the breath of Mandala, the other party should only lock the position of Mandala once a day. Tonight, those who pursue her will show up again. What the hell does this guy know? Mandala looks at Yi Tian with doubts. She can feel what Yi Tian is suggesting, but she feels that even if Yi Tianshu is extremely powerful, she can't be sure when those people will find themselves. Ding-ling-ling at this time, Yi Tian's mobile phone suddenly rings. Where have you been, Yi? Why not at school? Is there nothing wrong with you? Yi Tian took out his mobile phone and looked at it. He found that it was Shirxiong's phone. He pressed the answer button. After hearing Shirxiong's question, he said with a smile, I've come to Manan to do something. I'll go back to school tomorrow. Anyway, the teachers won't do anything because I'm skipping class. I'm too lazy to ask for leave. What's the situation over there, Auntie? Is there enough money? This guy is really a student. When Mandala heard this, he couldn't help staring at Yi Tian. Although she can see that Yi Tian is very young, some like a student, but did not expect that he is really a student. Enough. My mother got an injection and felt much better. Thank you for this. When Shixiang heard that Yi Tian was okay, he was relieved. After a word of gratitude, he said, I'm not calling you for my family's sake. I just heard something and want to talk to you. Su Qing, she dropped out of school. Su Qing dropped out of school? Yi Tian hears this, the brow involuntarily wrinkled, but immediately spread out again. Su Qing's affairs have nothing to do with him. I heard from people in the school that Su Qing's family didn't know why they went bankrupt. They not only lost a cent on the book, but also owed others a lot of money. After this happened, she moved out of the dormitory and said that she would drop out of school and stop studying. She wanted to make money to help her father pay his debts. But I don't think she wants to see those people at school look at her differently. After all, she used to be so proud that she couldn't stand this. Just now Su Qing came to see me. She said she couldn't contact you and wanted me to find you. I called you. You didn't have a signal, so I told her your rental address. She might go there to find you. At this time, Shirxiong continued, I tell you, there is something wrong with Su Qing's situation. You'd better call her in case she can't think of it and does something stupid. Well, I see. Take care of your aunt. Call me if you have anything. Yi Tian heard this, a little silent, nodded, hung up the phone. The look in his eyes is a little complicated. He didn't want to stir up too much in Su Qing's affairs, but Shirxiong's words can't help him to manage it again. Yi Tian is very clear about Su Qing's current state of mind. When his parents died, all his family assets disappeared, and his relatives became indifferent. After the dissolution of the engagement, he was also disheartened. Like Su Qing, he had the idea of dropping out of school, and even wanted to go away with his parents. However, it was his parents' wish that he would finish college that supported him and spent that hard time. Now Su Qing is repeating the road he used to walk. However, it was Taemin and Su Zhaoyun who led him to this situation, while it was Taemin and him who led Su Qing to this situation. After a moment of silence, Yi Tian pressed a string of numbers on his mobile phone, which was exactly Su Qing's number. Although, after his marriage, Su Qing repeatedly refused, he has deleted the number, but these numbers, as if engraved in his memory, incomparably familiar. Don't be stupid. Your father certainly doesn't want you to be like this. There's no way to walk in the past. If I can come here, you can. The phone rings 3 times. After connecting, Yi Tian says faintly to Su Qing on the other side of the phone. Yi Tian, do you still like me? After a long time, Su Qing's voice with trill came from the phone. Yi Tian is speechless for a while. What is in this woman's head? I just hope you can cherish your life. I don't think about anything else. Yi Tianping was quiet and hung up. Listening to the busy voice on the other side of the phone, Su Qing, who was sitting by the lake in the park, can't help but feel a sense of loss in his eyes. But a moment later, a smile appears at the corner of his mouth, then he pulls his feet out of the water and turns to walk out of the park. Since there is a person who cares about her life and death in this world, there is no need for her to do stupid things. But a few seconds later, Su Qing's steps stopped, his face showing loss. My father's company has closed down, and Su's villa has been destroyed by the fire. As for other houses, with the bankruptcy of the company, the sealing up and the debt paying, Nanhai is big, but it has no place for her. Maybe a moment later, Su Qing's eyes suddenly changed. With a trace of hope and shyness, he continued to walk outside the park. I'm going back to Nanhai. Are you going to follow me or are we going to go our separate ways here? At the same time, after Yi Tian hung up the phone, he looked at Mandala and asked. I'm just going to Nanhai, too. Mandala eyes do not blink, direct way. Whatever you want. Yi Tian is also too lazy to expose her lies. After nodding at will, he reaches out to stop a taxi. After a while, they arrived at the long-distance passenger station in southern Fujian. Coincidentally, when they arrived at the passenger station, they met the black car driver from Nanhai. The last trip was smooth, so Yi Tian didn't bother to take his car. Just let Yi Tian some speechlesses, all the way silent Mandala. When buying tickets, it is to the driver to say 2 tickets, and then chin toward Yi Tian pick, then big stab on the car. Man, you are so good. But you should thank me. The driver was obviously very impressed with this beautiful girl. When the Mandala got on the bus, he frowned at Yi Tian and gave him a thumbs up with emotion. Yi Tian understands that the driver may have misunderstood that he was with Su Qing, but he didn't bother to explain so much to him, and the fare was not expensive, so he took out his wallet and bought 2 tickets. I only have a small amount of money. When I get to Nanhai, I'll keep it for renting, eating and drinking. But don't worry, I'll be rich soon and I'll pay you back the fare. Mandala waited until Yi Tian got on the bus and sat down beside him, then slowly told him. Good. Yi Tian nodded at will. This guy, obviously a fairy, how so stingy? And he gave Fang Zhong a Xinling pill, but he planned to let me pay him back the fare. How could the difference be so big? When Mandala heard Yi Tian's words, she felt speechless. She turned her head out of the window and said nothing. After a while, all the passengers got on, the bus started, and drove along the way to the South Sea. Yi Tian leans back on the chair and closes his eyes. Mandala takes out the secret books she got from Yuan's family and carefully reads them. However, her attainments in cultivation are not high, and she obviously can't understand the above contents, and her brows are deeply locked. But even so, she hasn't asked Yi Tian any questions, just like sulking all the way. It was late at night, the car came to the service area. Yi Tian doesn't wait for the driver to open his mouth, so he is familiar with the way to go under the car. Mandala closed the secret book, also intend to get out of the car to breathe. Here they are. But Mandala just got out of the car, only to find Yi Tianjing standing in the open space at the door of the car. As if she had already noticed that she was walking behind her, she picked her chin towards the front and said faintly. What's coming? Mandala doubts toward the world of leaves picked the direction of the eyes, the pupil suddenly shrunk. In the service area, there are several big men who are looking at the people who get on and off each car. Not only that, there are also several big men who are guarding the supermarkets, toilets and other important places in the service area. How did these guys find me again? And this matter, how can this guy say it right? Mandala saw these strong men in black, both angry and surprised. Anger is, these guys, like flies, no matter how she evades, has been unable to throw off. Surprised is, this matter unexpectedly really said by Yi Tian. No. When Mandala was depressed, she suddenly found that the strong men in black had found her, and a group of people were rushing towards her position. Now, are you going to tell me something about you? At this time, Yi Tian looked back at the Mandala and said with a smile. Help me get rid of them. I'll tell you everything. Mandala's eyes changed rapidly, and immediately made a decision. Take them to the dark corner where there is no one. Yi Tianping nodded and walked to a dark area far away from the service area. Mandala clenched her teeth, followed Yi Tian closely, and walked towards that area. There are barbed wire fences around the service area. Soon, Yi Tian and Mandala come to the end, while the strong men in black are encircling them from all directions in a fan shape. Mandala, don't struggle anymore. Hand over the things and come with us to the dragon head. The leader, a strong man in black, glanced coldly at Mandala and said in a deep voice. I can go with you, but you have to ask him if he agrees first. Mandala's eyes flashed, and then pointed to Yi Tian beside him. Boy, you'd better get out of the way. Don't delay our work. The strong man in black hears the sound and stares at Yi Tian with poor eyes. He threatens with compassion. Should these people be killed? Yi Tian ignored the strong man in black, but turned to look at the mandala and asked faintly. These people are killers. They do all kinds of evil. There are lives in their hands, and more than one of them. Mandala nodded her head without thinking, and her eyes sank in a complicated voice. Once upon a time, she was one of these people. Her hands were red with blood, and she was in debt. Prisoner killer? Yi Tian's eyes twinkle slightly. Mandala's words confirm his previous guess that this woman is indeed a killer. Boy, you really want to die. Let's go together, let the boy see what real kung fu is, then take both of them and go to see the dragon head. The leader of the strong man in black heard Yi Tian's words, and his eyes immediately showed a touch of anger. With a wave of his hand, those men immediately followed him and strode toward Yi Tian's position. Earth avalanche. But at this time, Yi Tian looked at the group of strong men in black, his eyes were calm, his voice was cold, and his hand waved gently toward the ground. Hum. Almost at the moment when his hand fell, the ground suddenly began to tremble for no reason, making people almost unstable, as if a low-intensity earthquake suddenly struck. What's going on? Underground sudden upheaval, so that the leader of the strong man in black eyes a stagnation, residual light toward the surrounding sweep, but a glance swept, his face expression cannot help but solidified. Except for the area where they are, the people in the car in the distance seem to have noticed nothing, as if the earthquake was just for them. However, how can there be such a strange earthquake in the world? Poop. Poop. Almost at the same time when he was puzzled, the ground under the feet of his companions was cracked for no reason. More than 10 people, like dumplings, fell into the cracks. What's more strange is that without waiting for these people to make a scream, the cracked soil layer suddenly merged and directly sealed them into the soil layer. What's more, there is no crack on the closed ground, as if all that just appeared is just an illusion. Dream, it must be a dream. The leader, a strong man in black, has been completely absent-minded and keeps explaining to himself. Boom! But the next second, he felt that his feet were empty, and the whole person felt a sense of falling. Then he saw that the dark soil around him was rapidly approaching him. Before he gave a dull hum, the world became dark. At this moment, he knew that it was not a dream, but a reality. But from now on, he can only dream underground. Hiss. Mandala was stunned, constantly pumping air conditioning, eyes in addition to horror, is no other expression. Now that the world is clean, you can tell me something about you. Yi Tian turns his head and looks at the mandala. I used to be a killer of Tiangong. To be exact, I was a killing machine cultivated by Tiangong. From small to large, we learn how to kill a person quickly. At the beginning, I thought that what Tiangong asked us to do was right, and what we were asked to kill were some heinous people to be killed. But then, on a mission, they asked me to kidnap a little girl and cut off her ear to give it to his parents. I realized that I might be wrong. I resisted that time, but I was severely reprimanded later. I got a task assignment. The task was to work for the leader. He asked us to go to a family in Europe to get something. His attitude at that time was very urgent, and 20 killers were dispatched at one time, as if that thing was very important to him. That mission was successful, but I was the only one who died, and that thing was in my hands. When Mandala heard Yi Tian's words, she woke up with a touch of bitterness and determination in her eyes, and said slowly, I don't want to do such things for the prisoner of heaven, nor do I want to have innocent blood on my hands, and I don't want the dragon head to escape because he got what he wanted. As for the next thing, you should be able to guess. The truth is that Mandala's situation is pretty miserable. Yi Tian looked at the mandala. For a moment, he was sighing. I've told you all about me. There is no difference between me and the people you just killed. If you can't see it, I have nothing to say about burying them with me. I deserve all this. However, even if it's death, you should let me know. I want to know how these people find me again and again. Mandala bit his lower lip, then raised his head, staring at Yi Tian's eyes, stubborn way. After escaping from the prison, she went to the hotel to change all her clothes and dress up. She also went to the hospital for a general examination to make sure that there was no tracking device implanted in her body. But even if she was so cautious, the prisoners in heaven seemed to have opened their eyes. No matter where she hid, they would come after her for 3 or 5 days, or 1 or 2 days at least. If this matter is not clear, even if she is dead, she feels that she can't close her eyes. In fact, it's very simple. You've been left with a Taoist art similar to the one I just used. This kind of Taoist art is called suazhou. No matter how you hide, the performer can use this kind of Taoist art to detect your position. Tian looks at the mandala with a faint smile, and then the mana runs. He grabs the mandala with empty hands and says, "Shoot." Before the mandala reacts, she feels light, and then a translucent, faint halo, seed-like thing floats from her to Tian's palm. That's why they've been able to find me all along? Mandala stares at the light seed in Tian's hand for a long time, then his face shows a look of consternation and says, "If so, isn't the dragon head a strong cultivator like you? He should be called a cultivator for such a superficial means? Don't laugh off my big teeth." With a sneer, Tian's mana works. With a pinch, the seed of light immediately disintegrates and disappears in the air. Mandala has been a little stunned. She really did not expect that the problem that plagued her for so long was solved so easily by Tian. "My doubts are clear. You can kill me." After a long time, Mandala raised her head, closed her eyes and said slowly, "To kill you? Why am I doing this?" Tian looks at Mandala strangely, shakes his head, and then says, "You are just under duress, but you are just evil. Why should I kill you? On the contrary, from now on, you will be free, and the killers of Tiangong will never find you again." Tian is not a saint who is jealous of evil. He understands that many people in this world will do many things against their heart because of many difficulties. Are these people villains? Not necessarily. Those who use these difficult words to coerce them to do things are the real villains. At the beginning, Su Zhaoyun would punish Su Zhaoyun, but he would not kill him if he only helped Taemin do things because Taemin was forced to stare at his parents. But unfortunately, in order to survive, Su Zhaoyun took the initiative to help Taemin and extended his black hand to his parents. Therefore, Su Zhaoyun can't live. What are you two doing? You can't talk about love in the car. Do you have to be in this dark corner? A whole load of people are waiting for you too. At this time, the driver came panting, looking at the two people, not angry rebuke way. Tian smiles at the driver and follows him to the bus. Mandala stares at Tian's back, hesitates for a moment, and then walks quickly. After getting on the bus and waiting for the car to drive onto the highway, Mandala hesitated for a moment, took out a small bag from her backpack, handed it to Tian, and said, "The things in this bag are what the tap asked us to find. It's useless for me to keep it. Maybe you can use it. Take it as a gift to help me solve my problem." Tian looks at the mandala. After opening the bag, there comes out a hollow copper ball the size of a child's fist. The carving of the hollowed-out copper ball is very fine, with various patterns of birds and animals carved on it. At first glance, it is often played by people. The copper is bright, and it looks like pure gold. Not only that, Tian also felt a faint fluctuation of spiritual power from the hollow copper ball. Linglong ball, a little interesting. Tian holds the hollowed-out copper ball and puts it in front of his eyes. After a careful look, his eyes are slightly surprised. What does that mean? Mandala was obviously curious about the secret of the hollow copper ball and asked in a hurry. "It's a secret tool for collecting things." Tian holds the linglong ball and bumps up and down, saying, "Every linglong ball must be opened in a corresponding way. If it is broken by brute force, a spirit fire hidden in it will burn the things stored inside, so that the destroyer can get nothing." There are such things in the world. Mandala listened to Tian's words, a burst of dejected, but soon, the corners of the mouth will show a wry smile. She from yesterday to today, with Tian's side, see the incredible things, also less? And which one of these things is more incredible than a copper ball that will burn everything in a disorderly destruction? Can you open this thing? Immediately after, Mandala looked at Tian and asked. The opening method of linglong ball is a little cumbersome. Even if I want to open it, I have to deduce it slowly. It is estimated that it will take 1 or 2 months to find the way to open it. Yi Tian shook his head, and then said, "This thing, I accept, the right when you're gift and fair. Linglong ball is very rare, and the things hidden with Linglong ball must be very precious." Even he was curious about what was hidden in it. When Mandala heard the word fair, she was speechless for a while. She nodded and turned to look out of the window. If the Taoist art of seeking trace is broken, the killer of heaven prisoner will never find her again, which means that this time she really escaped from heaven and was free. She has been longing for freedom, but now, at last, she doesn't know what to do the next night. At 9 o'clock, the car slowly stopped at Nanhai passenger station. "I'm going home. This is my number. If you stay in Nanhai in the future, you can come to me if you have anything to do." After getting off the bus, Yi Tian reported his number to Mandala, then looked at her and said, "What's your plan?" Mandala's eyes are full of confusion. She thought all the way in the car, but did not think of what she could do. Over the years, she was in heaven prison, and there was nothing else she could do except to learn the killing skills. "I'll think about it for myself. I want to walk around and start all over again." After a little silence, Mandala looked up at Yi Tian and said with a smile, "Good. Keep your heart. I don't want to hear any unruly cases in Nanhai. In that case, I won't be as polite to you as I am now. I'll go first." Yi Tian nodded, stopped a taxi and went back to the rental house. Mandala see Yi Tian's action, instinctive will follow, but just walked 2 steps, then stopped, and then the corners of the mouth show a thick bitter smile. From now on, she is going to part with Yi Tian. Just, looking at the taxi leaving, she felt empty in her heart, and felt as if there was no decline. Follow Yi Tian. No matter what he does, she will follow him. But now, she has no one to follow. Just stay in the South China Sea and start all over again. I don't believe that I can still be starved here. Next time I see this cheapskate again, I'll throw the ticket money to him. I'll be ashamed of this cheapskate. After a long time, Mandala shook her head hard, then rubbed her hands toward her face, pinched her fist, and walked in the opposite direction. In her face, at the moment filled with fear and longing. The new life is already waving to her, but she can't be sure whether the coming is good or bad. Half an hour later, Yi Tian returned to the door of the rental house. However, when he came to the door, his steps could not help but stagnate. I saw that the rental house was brightly lit. The little girl, Cicada, is so diligent now that she practices boxing here at night? With doubts in his heart, Yi Tian opens the door and finds that the courtyard is empty, but along the position of the bathroom, there are bursts of water clattering. Does the Cicada's family have no money to pay the water fee? Has the water stopped and come to take a bath? But didn't you just give them money? Yi Tian swept an eye toward toilet, some doubt, but also did not pay much attention to, prepare to enter the door. Cicada, is that you? But at this time, the person who was taking a bath in the bathroom seems to hear the movement outside, open a small crack in the bathroom door, and then stick out a head with wet hair. Su Qing? Yi Tian hears the sound, sweeps toward the bathroom, and then sees the figure. He is stunned. I saw that the woman with wet green silk was not Su Qing, but who was it? However, Su Qing obviously didn't expect that Yi Tian came back. When he came out, he didn't wrap anything. Along the crack of the door, he could see more than half of the white and a mottled black. Even if Yi Tianding is very good at this soul-stirring picture, he can't help looking straight after it. Ah! Yi Tian, how did you come back? When Su Qing saw Yi Tian, he was obviously startled. He couldn't help screaming, "Why am I here? This sentence seems to be me asking you, right? This is my home." Hearing Su Qing's words, Yi Tian was speechless for a while. Su Qing also knew that he had made a slip of words. He tensed the bathroom door in a hurry, and then wanted to explain. "You wash it first. We'll talk about other things after washing it." Yi Tian turns his eyes and shakes his head. After removing the picture from his mind, he goes to the room. Who? When Su Qing heard this, he quickly closed the door, then leaned against the door and breathed out a long breath, but his face was red with shame at the moment. Just, when she thought of Yi Tian's straight eyes, she couldn't help smiling. How can food be thrown on the ground? At this time, Yi Tian had already opened the door and glanced inside. He saw that there were several red and gorgeous chestnuts on the ground, which made him shake his head. He picked up the chestnuts and put them on the tea table. Then he leaned against the sofa and twisted his brows into a knot. Why is Su Cheng here? A moment later, the door of the bathroom opened. Su Cheng wore a long t-shirt of Yi Tian, then walked into the living room carefully, looked at Yi Tian apologetically and said, "Sorry, I live in your house without your permission." "Your family?" Yi Tian frowned. He just wanted to ask Su Cheng why she didn't live in her own house. But before he finished, he stopped talking. Su Cheng's current situation, he cannot be more clear, should be the bankruptcy of the company. The property has been sealed up. Our houses have been sealed up. Sure enough, when Su Cheng heard this, he looked sad and said, "I don't know where I should go. Shi Xiong told me that you live here, so I came here." Then a little girl said you were not at home. I said. When Su Cheng said this, he looked at Yi Tian, looking embarrassed and shy, and said, "I said it's your fiancée. She wants to live here for 2 days. She called her mother and asked me a lot of things, so she let me live." No wonder. Yi Tian was relieved when he heard that. He said that this was the reason why he and Cicada let Su Cheng in. Su Cheng peeps at Yi Tian, and his cheeks are feverish. Not long ago, it was this identity that she resisted most. But even she did not expect, now she even took the initiative to mention this identity. "You." Yi Tian opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but before he said anything, he had a big head. The arrival of Su Cheng is indeed a big trouble. Drive her away, but this woman is homeless. If she drives her away, maybe she will do something stupid. But if he doesn't hurry up and let her live here, it's not convenient for him to do anything. Secondly, if he finds Ning Yao and brings her back, he sees a girl living with him. What's the matter? Yi Tian, I know that I have done a lot of wrong things before. But I really know I'm wrong. Can you help me? I've seen it. It's 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. Can I stay in the guest room? I have no money on me now, but when I make money, I will share the rent with you, and I can help you cook. Su Cheng looked at Yi Tian praying, as if afraid that Yi Tian would drive her out. What should I do with this woman? Yi Tian frowned and twisted into a big knot in one's heart. In this situation, even if Yi Tian was once a great monk in Yupu, he felt like he was in a difficult position to ride a tiger. You can live here for the time being. After 2 days, I'll help you find a house to rent, and then you can move out. After a little silence, Yi Tian said slowly. In the end, he didn't work hard. It's not that I have any feelings for Su Cheng, but that I can't bear to look at a person I once knew, just like this, wandering on the street, even doing stupid things. Moreover, he believes that even if Ning Yao knows the truth, he will do so. After all, Ning Yao is so kind. Thank you. I will certainly help you with your work. In the future, when I come to cook every day, I will quickly find a job to make money and then move away. Su Cheng looks at Yi Tian in surprise. Unexpectedly, Yi Tian agrees to her request. No matter what kind of mood Yi Tian is out of, she has tasted the warmth and coldness of human feelings. At this moment, she is really grateful to Yi Tian. By the way, I'll remind you that this house has been a murderous house. If you are afraid, I can lend you some money to stay in the hotel outside. Yi Tian didn't expect that Su Cheng really planned to live in this way, and some of them didn't give up to frighten her. I'm not afraid of you. Su Cheng winked at Yi Tian and said with a smile. I'm not afraid. Yi Tian has no intention to pay attention to Su Cheng's implication, nods lightly, and then says, You go back to the guest room, I want to have a rest. Su Cheng looks at Yi Tian's indifference. He can't help feeling lost. He nods and goes to the guest room. She felt that perhaps in Yi Tian's eyes, there was no difference between taking her and taking a stray dog or cat. Wait a minute. But when she turned around, Yi Tian suddenly stopped her. When Su Cheng's eyes showed some hope, Yi Tian pointed to the tea table and said, Are you eating these chestnuts? Don't put it on the ground. Take it away. It was just for a few chestnuts. Su Qing was disappointed. He shook his head and said, "This is not my thing. When I came here, it was on the ground. I thought you put it there on purpose, so it didn't move." "Well, it's okay. You can rest early." Yi Tian nodded at will and said, "Since it's not Su Qing, it should be the little girl of cicada. It's just that little girl doesn't eat melon seeds, but chestnut instead." Su Qing ran quietly, and soon went into the guest room, lying on the bed, looking at the ceiling bitterly. In the past, she didn't expect that one day, she would be placed under the hedge of others, and she would still be placed under the hedge of Yi Tian and live with him. But bitter to bitter, but at this moment, she is inexplicably have a kind of peace of mind, even if this is a house. Just like what she said before, "With you, I'm not afraid." After Su Qing enters the guest room and confirms that she won't come out again, Yi Tian goes to the eye position of the spirit gathering array. He takes out the blood-grain steel long knife, flying sword fragments and meteorite. Fire. Yi Tian stares at these three items and nods contentedly. After the mana runs, he condenses a fiery fireball in the air. Then he throws the blood-grain steel long knife and the meteorite into the fireball to melt and fuse them. A moment later, the blood-grain steel and meteorite iron melted into molten iron and gathered into a liquid metal ball in the air. Yi Tian is not in a hurry to fight the flying sword pieces in, but carefully controls the liquid metal ball with mana, carefully removes the impurities, and makes it pure. If it was the heyday of the past, Yi Tian only needed to blink an eye to complete all this. But now, he is the only one on the third floor of the cave, but he is struggling until midnight to get rid of all the impurities. Not only that, but also his face was pale and his mana was empty. But fatigue comes from exhaustion. When he sees that the liquid metal sphere with various colors has become silvery white, mixed with blood veins and colorful gold powder, it doesn't look like metal, but more like a work of art like glass. Yi Tian's eyes are more and more excited, because he knows that his firstling being on earth is coming out. Yes, after taking a deep breath, Yi Tian's dangling left hand flicked the flying sword fragment into the liquid metal ball which had become incomparably pure. After that, he wields his mana and urges fire to melt the pieces of the flying sword. No! The flying sword used to be too high, even if it was just a fragment, it is not so easy to melt now. But just for a moment, when he saw the fierce flame, but the flying sword fragments did not change, Yi Tian's eyebrows twisted into a knot in one's heart. Should all previous achievements be wasted? Yi Tian feels that even with the blessing of the spirit gathering array, the mana in his body has become thinner and thinner. After the circulation is dry, he can't help squeezing his left hand. If you give up now, all previous achievements will be wasted. At most, you can only refine a mouthful of heavy utensils, which is far from what you expected. Use the original fire in the elixir field and try again, but a moment later, Yi Tian's eyes flashed a touch of resolute color, gritted his teeth and made a decision. It's too much for a spirit soldier to help him today. Even if the spirit fire in the elixir field is not formed yet, it will hurt the source if it is used rashly, but it's worth it as long as it can be refined into a spirit soldier. Without any hesitation, Yi Tian's only remaining mana is still the source of ghost fire in the elixir field. Boom! In a flash, along Yi Tian's body, a terrible heat breath burst out immediately. Then in the void, a fire shadow gradually appeared and floated to the flying sword pieces in the metal ball. Just for such a short time, Yi Tian's face is as pale as paper, and his lips have lost their blood color. He is so wet with sweat that he just fished out of the water, and his mind is dizzy. But Yi Tian didn't feel it. His eyes were still staring at the fire. It's done! Sua Wangwen's idea is extremely overbearing. Even if the original spirit fire is just a virtual shadow, it's more powerful than the flame of burning Taoism. The flame is just a lick. The fragments of the flying sword that had been burned for a long time immediately melted into a pool of gold water, and then slowly merged with the liquid metal ball. Sword. This scene appears, Yi Tian does not have any hesitation, hands in the void to both sides of a pole. Zheng. In a flash, along the rented house, there was a sound of Qingyue sword, followed by a white sword with blood red and gold veins. In the veins, there was a long sword like a beautiful gold powder. Yes, Yi Tian bites the tip of his tongue, and his blood essence spurts out and falls on the sword. In an instant, from the sword, there was a feeling of blood connection with him. It's done. Yi Tian reaches out his hand to hold the sword. He shakes it gently, and a group of sword flowers are dazzling. This sword, in Yi Tian's hands, is so spiritual that it exudes a kind feeling. Yi Tian takes out several Yuan's weapons from the storage ring and cuts them lightly with the long sword. The blade immediately breaks into two pieces like rotten wood, without damaging the edge of the sword. It's worth it. This scene makes Yi Tian smile brightly. According to his judgment, this sword, whether from the degree of blood connection or the degree of sharpness, is now at least at the level of medium quality Lingbing. This kind of spirit soldier can get twice the result with half the effort when facing the enemy. But Yi Tian also has some small regrets in his heart. It's a pity that he didn't find the Shifeng stone this time. Otherwise, if he can melt the Shifeng stone and put it into the sword, he can turn the Lingbing sword into Lingbing flying sword. At that time, as long as his cultivation breaks through the 5 levels of the cave, he can fly with the sword. He can turn the sword into a mustard seed, put it in the elixir field, and put it on the top of the original spirit fire. He can temper it day by day, so that his level will be higher. People want to make progress, but they also need to be satisfied. They can't finish everything in one stroke. There will be wind shooting stones, magic weapons, and half-immortal soldiers. But soon, Yi Tian put aside his sigh and held his sword. After shaking a few sword flowers, he was full of pride. Dog thieves of Taiyiman, come quickly. As long as I see you, I will sacrifice my spirit soldier with your blood. One night without words, soon to the next morning. Yi Tian was exhausted when he was refining Lingbing last night. When he was still meditating, he heard Su Qing's voice of getting up from the guest room. After washing, there were bursts of ding-dong and low cries from the kitchen. It was estimated that she was careless and knocked something over on the ground. This charming girl really plans to cook for herself. When Yi Tian heard the news, he couldn't laugh or cry, but he was worried that with Su Qing's level, he would not be able to cook, and would tear down the whole kitchen, so he got up and went out. You're up. I've just finished washing the rice. I'll have breakfast soon. When Su Qing heard the news, he looked back at Yi Tian and said in a hurry. Then he twisted the gas stove several times, but he found that there was no response. I can't get the fire on, and I have breakfast soon. The leaf day. A burst of rice. Smile. Can't walk over, press a button, after raising a group of flames. Wait, want to press down to be able to twist. Su Qing vomited his tongue and was at a loss. Leaf day looking at her appearance, in the heart of a burst of funny, but immediately, and some sigh. Now Su Qing, I'm afraid he is really regarded as the last resort, but if Su Qing knows that he killed Su Zhaoyun, what kind of performance should it be? Even though Su Zhaoyun is unforgivable, he is Su Qing's father after all, and his blood is thicker than water. You don't look very well. Go back to your room and have a rest. I'll fry vegetables. At this time, Su Qing looked at Yi Tian and found that his face was white and frightening. He said in a hurry. No, you don't have to think about helping to cook in the future. Yi Tian shook his head. When he saw Su Qing's lost face, he said, I've agreed with the cicada that we will have dinner at their house in the future. If I don't go, she will feel guilty. Is she going to cook for Yi Tian? Su Qing looks at Yi Tian suspiciously. She doesn't understand why the dark woman she saw yesterday should treat Yi Tian like this. Even, she thinks this can be Yi Tian is deceiving her intentionally, do not want to eat the meal that she makes. Master Qingqing, are you up? My mother asked me to teach you how to eat. At this time, along the courtyard came a knock, and then the voice of Cicada came. Here teach your mother 2 words. Su Qing's face immediately appeared to a blush, shyly looking at Yi Tian. Wait, I don't let her call so. But shyness to shyness, she is to understand, Yi Tian really did not cheat him. If she didn't take care of Yi Tianping's diet, how could she let the cicada come to ask her to eat? I know. Yi Tian nodded at will, then went over, opened the door of the courtyard, and said with a smile, Little girl, don't catch people in the future, just call the teacher's mother. There's only one teacher's mother. You haven't met her yet. Yi Tian has a girlfriend now? When Su Qing heard this, he felt that there was a buzzing sound in his head, and the whole person was in a mess. What's more, he was surrounded by a huge loss, empty. Ah, master, why did you come back so soon? I'm not ready to ask you about boxing yet. As soon as the cicada sees Tian, he immediately plunges into his arms and says, "Why, don't you want me back so soon?" Tian knocked on the cicada's head, and then said to Su Qing, "Let's go and have dinner." Su Cheng's smell speech quickly came over. The great liar. The cicada saw Su Qing, snorted, raised his head and walked forward. Su Qing suddenly made a big red face, but could not explain anything. Yesterday's she may not be deceived green and cicada. However, compared with this embarrassment, Yu Guang keeps looking at Tian. She wants to know who Tian's girlfriend is? Is that the beautiful girl with a pair of heroic sword eyebrows that day? Qing's cooking is very good, although it's only a small dish of porridge, with a few steamed buns, but it's also delicious. Tian was tired all night last night, and he didn't have a good meal on the mountain recently. Naturally, he had a meal with an open stomach. As for Su Qing, he had something in his heart and was constantly looked at with disdain by the cicada, so he just ate a little and put down the dishes and chopsticks, and lost his appetite. After dinner, Su Qing rushes to wash the bowl. Qing stops him a few times. But seeing that Tian doesn't mean to dissuade him, Su Qing goes to the kitchen to clean up. Just after a while, the sound of breaking bowls came from the kitchen. "Miss Su, you just don't have a job." "I'll do it." Qing looks at the broken dishes on the ground, heartache, and quickly invites Su Qing out of the kitchen. The cicada gives Su Qing a strange look and laughs. Su Qing looked at the picture, his cheeks were red, and he wanted to find a seam to drill in. She thought she was pretty good, but she didn't know that she couldn't do anything. "I went out to find a job. My father used to have some good friends who might help me." Su Qingru sat for a moment and then looked at Tian and said, "Well." Tian nodded at will and didn't stop Su Qing. But he knew that Su Qing's trip would fail. Rich in the mountains have distant relatives, poor in the partition nobody. This human warmth, he has already tasted in advance. It is not a bad thing for Su Qing to suffer some hardships. Su Qing saw that Tian didn't stop him. He was both disappointed and grateful. What's lost is that Tian doesn't care about her. What's thankful is that Tian doesn't see that she's not happy now. What she says is ugly, which is to save her face. "Let's go. After dinner, let's go and fight with me." After Su Qing left, Tian reached out and rubbed the cicada's head, then took her back to his yard. "Is there anything strange about you practicing here these 2 days?" Tian went to the yard, looking at the cicada's boxing, and asked her. There was a squirrel who came often. At the beginning, he was a little afraid of me. Later, when he saw that I ignored him, he went into the room by himself. "I remember, Master, you told me that you didn't turn it out if you didn't care about anything in this yard." "Master, how are you? Shall I be obedient?" When she heard this, she was just ready to boast a few words. When Yu Guang saw the wall, he turned to the other side and said in a low voice, "Master, that little guy is here again. It's really a squirrel, however. How is the color of hair white?" Tianyu glanced at the wall, and immediately saw that there was a hairy white squirrel, staring at a pair of ruby-like eyes, looking warily into the yard. "It's this guy." When he saw the color of his hair, Tian immediately determined that it was this little thing that left those white hairs in the eyes of the gathering spirit. Seeing this, Tian immediately took his eyes back, pretending that he had no interest in it. Zhizhi. When Tian didn't seem to be interested in the cicada fighting there, the little squirrel cheered and jumped down from the wall. After 3 jumps and 2 jumps, he reached the position of gathering spirit and forming a set on the ground. "This little thing will enjoy." Tian see this, dumbfounded, but soon, eyes slightly changed. He felt that the aura of heaven and earth gathered in the spirit gathering array was converging towards the little squirrel. This kind of omen, although can't compare with his thought of cultivating Sui Huan Temple, is very extraordinary on the earth. This guy, how can he understand the cultivation method? On this earth, I don't see any real practitioners, but I see a little squirrel stepping into the threshold of cultivation. Tian's eyes stagnated and he was dumbfounded. At the same time, he quickly winked at the cicada and asked her to continue to practice boxing. After not frightening the little squirrel, he quickly rushed to the living room, blinked at the little squirrel's side, and then clawed at the little squirrel. When the crisis came, the little guy seemed to be unaware of it and still on the ground. But the corner of Yi Tian's mouth showed a touch of radiance. He already saw that the fluff on the little guy's body was trembling. Squeak! Sure enough, in the moment when Yi Tian's hand almost touched the little squirrel, it suddenly jumped to one side, ready to rush out the door. Little fellow, he is not big and has a lot of thoughts. Yi Tian has already noticed that the little squirrel has found his own action. With a light smile, the action on his hand suddenly changes, and he grabs the little squirrel in the direction of fleeing. Shwa! But almost at the same time of Yi Tian's hand, the little squirrel jumped into the air, turned his direction out of thin air and hid to the other side. Well. Yi Tian looks surprised. It was the first time he saw this kind of spirit beast that could move its body in the air. This agility, as well as speed, is really rare. Shwa! At this time, the little squirrel pushed hard. It was clear that there was nothing under his feet, but he jumped up to the wall as if he had stepped on something. Yi Tian's eyesight is amazing. At a glance, he can see that when the little squirrel's two hind legs push back, the sole of his feet flickers. Obviously, this should be some kind of Taoist art it mastered. Want to run, little guy? You can't run when you come to me. But the speed of the little squirrel is fast, but Yi Tian's speed is not slow. Almost when the little squirrel moves, he stands on tiptoe and gets up in the air. With one claw, he pinches the little squirrel in the palm of his hand. At this time, Yi Tian finally saw the specific appearance of the little squirrel. This little guy, about the length of a big Coke bottle, is hairy and chubby, with a big fluffy tail, occupying half the length of his body. A pair of small ears, with white hair. For little feet, pink and tender, with a touch of pink, look very lovely. There is no doubt that this little thing is absolutely cute. Squeak squeak. After the squirrel was caught, the fluffy fluff of the whole body stood up, kept screaming, and a pair of ruby-like big eyes rolled around. However, this intelligent little thing is really different from wild animals. After being caught, he did not go back to bite Yi Tian like the instinct of wild animals. Instead, he picked up his two forepaws and kept bowing to Yi Tian, as if begging for mercy. This little guy is so spiritual. Yi Tian looks at the little squirrel's action, and his heart is full of praise. He felt that the little squirrel's cultivation is not very high, but this spirit is really rare. Even among the many spirit beasts in the square-inch spirit realm, they are absolutely top-notch. Don't you think it's too easy to borrow my spirit gathering array and steal my aura for cultivation, and now you want to escape? Yi Tian chuckles and flicks his fingers toward the forehead of the little squirrel. Squeak squeak. The little squirrel heard Yi Tian's words. In his big round eyes, he showed the color of prayer and doubt. He pointed to the living room with one hand. You mean you paid me? Yi Tian looked at the little squirrel's action and couldn't help laughing. Squeak. The little squirrel nodded in a hurry. When Yi Tian saw its look, his eyes changed and he swept towards the floor of the living room. He immediately saw two purple chestnuts. Seeing this, he immediately remembered the chestnuts he had seen on the ground last night. He grabbed them, shook them in front of the little squirrel's eyes, and said with a smile, "This is the reward for your cultivation here?" Squeak squeak. Little squirrel nodded in a hurry, and then a pair of big eyes showed a strong color of resentment. That look in the eyes, as if to blame Yi Tian, why he clearly gave the reward of borrowing the spirit gathering array, but Yi Tian still wants to catch himself, it's really improper. Well, I did it wrong. Yi Tian couldn't help laughing when he looked at Squirrel's spirituality. Master, let it go. It didn't mean to. At this time, the cicada, who is practicing boxing, runs over and pinches the two soft ears of the squirrel. He is attracted by the charm of the little guy and asks for love from Yi Tian for him. This little guy is really a female killer. Hearing this, Yi Tian shook his head. After a while, even the cicada was conquered by it. Don't worry, I won't do anything about you. If you want to come in the future, you should come in a fair way. You don't need to hide. When I don't need to gather spirit array, you can use it freely. Yi Tian smiles, reaches out his hand to scratch the little squirrel's belly, then shakes the chestnut in his hand and says, "This thing is your reward." Come once and bring me two. Squeak squeak. Little squirrel's big eyes blinked and his head went crazy. Obviously, he thought the deal was very good for him. Tian smiles and releases his hand. Small squirrel feet fell on the ground, quickly ran forward a few steps, and then looked back vigilantly at Tian. When Tian doesn't seem to grasp it anymore, the little guy moves 2 steps toward the position of the array eye. He wants to see whether Tiangong's words are deceiving it or real. This little guy is really a ghost. Tian shook his head with a smile and said, "Don't worry, be bold. Since I've said that, I won't cheat you." When he was in Fengsuan spiritual realm, he was very different from other monks. He did not regard the spirit beast as the object of use, but as an equal existence. So at that time, among the spirit beasts, he was very popular. Many spirit beasts even chose to settle in Qingming Blessed area. Among them, there were many spirit beasts in Yuanying area, which improved the combat power of Qingming Blessed area. Unfortunately, in the subsequent disaster, these spirit beasts fought with Ning Yao. In order to protect them, they died one by one. Therefore, he is now on the earth. It is not easy for him to meet a small spirit beast with such a strong spirit, who can not only understand his speech, but also make such a humanized action. How can he not have a good relationship? The little squirrel stares at Tian. It seems that this powerful guy is not deceiving himself, so he runs to the position of the array eye and lies down. He makes a comfortable circle. In an instant, Tian felt that all the auras of heaven and earth gathered along the spirit gathering array entered the little squirrel's body. A squirrel is so diligent, how can you continue to be lazy? Practice hard. Tian stares at the little squirrel for 2 eyes, then turns his head and looks at the side of his body. He practices his boxing and secretly looks at the cicada that the little squirrel looks at. He says in a deep voice. The cicada vomited his tongue and quickly concentrated on it. Seeing this, Tian nodded with satisfaction and went to the little squirrel. The little squirrel was obviously aware that someone was approaching, and his whole body bristled up with some vigilance. But wait a moment, Tian seemed to ignore its meaning. This just rest assured bold rise, fluffy slowly droop. Seeing this, Tian turns his mind and falls on the little squirrel. And there are some ways for this little guy to cultivate his spirit and body by entering the Tao with dreams. When the idea falls on the little squirrel, Tian's eyes can't help changing, showing some startled color. The moment his mind fell on the little squirrel, it was on the little squirrel. He heard the sound of Huangzhong Dilu, and even the sound of Buddhist chanting. Tian is no stranger to this method of cultivation. In the square-inch spiritual realm, there is a sect like a little squirrel, which is called Fanzong. Moreover, as far as he knows, among the Fanzong, most of the people who can enter the Tao with dreams are like Fanzi. He really didn't expect that he found not only the cultivation method of Vatican sect, but also the rebellious talent of Vatican sect in a little squirrel on the earth. However, Tian is not eager to ask the little squirrel why he learned this secret method. Instead, he sits on the side of the little squirrel with his knees crossed, and runs the idea of Sua Wangwen to practice. One person and one squirrel, sitting in silence, meditating and practicing boxing in the charming courtyard. This small narrow courtyard not only has a strange harmony, but also makes people feel that it is an independent world of practice. Squeak squeak. After a long time, the little squirrel finally woke up from the dream, stretched a big stretch, fluffy tail swayed a few times, satisfied called twice. Little guy. Hearing the sound, Tian slowly opened his eyes, looked at the little squirrel and said with a smile, "Would you like to take me to see where you got this cultivation method?" Gigi. The little squirrel hears Tian's words. In the heart is obviously some embarrassment. The eyeball sun dribbles around, don't know how to respond. Don't worry, although your cultivation method is good, I won't be greedy. Leaf Day sees its appearance, light smile slowly way. As he said, although the secret cultivation method of Fanzong is good, and the method of entering the Tao with dreams is quite strange, it is still inferior to the idea of Sua Wangwen. Moreover, with his eyesight, the secret method of little squirrel's cultivation is incomplete. If not, what he just sensed is not only the sound of Huangzong Dilu's percussion and Buddhist chanting, but also the sound of many golden Buddha of Fanzong, sitting on the lotus platform, reciting the true words and scriptures in his mouth, tapping Huangzong Dilu in his hand, and washing the little squirrel's spirit with the Buddhist chanting grand sight. Zhizhi. After staring at Yi Tian, the little squirrel seems to be sure that he doesn't have any malice, so he nods, then jumps up the wall, looks at Yi Tian, squeaks twice, as if to signal Yi Tian to follow. Master, I'm going too. When the cicada saw this picture, he quickly pulled Yi Tian's clothes and prayed. Then together. Yi Tian nods with a smile, and then takes the cicada and follows the squirrel to the front. A big too small soon left the rental area, and then came to a small hill not far away, followed, through a jungle, came to a small cave. Little squirrel stopped, like a child in the treasure, raised a paw, pointed to the cave, and then flashed big eyes, waiting for Yi Tian's praise. It's in this cave? When Yi Tian swept the cave, he immediately felt that there was a big belly stone statue of Brahma lying on one side. Yi Tian reaches out to the cave and takes out the stone statue of Brahma. It seems that the stone statue of Sanskrit has experienced a lot of wind and frost, and its face has become blurred, but the carving is very exquisite. Even if it is only a few sketches, it still makes the image of a sleeping Sanskrit vivid. Not only that, Yi Tian also found that although the stone statue of Brahma was only the size of 2 palms, it was surprisingly heavy. I was afraid it was nearly 100 jin. But the strange thing is that there is no difference when the divine idea sweeps the stone statue. At the same time, the little squirrel on the ground stood upright and looked at the stone statue of Brahma in Yi Tian's hands. His eyes were full of worry and reluctance. He seemed very afraid that Yi Tian would take away his favorite baby. But it did not dare to resist, 2 pink forepaws stacked together, some slightly trembling. Do you think I'll take your baby? Yi Tian looks at its appearance, a light smile, way. Small squirrel C, immediately came to the spirit, big eyes blink, full of flattering color, 2 forepaws together, toward Yi Tian constantly bow. Ah! What a lovely little squirrel, but almost at this time, along the woods not far away, suddenly came a voice, followed by 3 figures came out of the woods, a woman and 2 men. The girl's makeup is exquisite, her face is like a jade plate, and her figure is enchanting. As for the 2 men, they are about 1.8 meters in appearance, dressed well, and have the appearance of a rich and expensive child. As far as Yi Tian's feeling is concerned, these 3 people have the spirit of mountain people's cultivation. The girl is at the top of the yellow level. As for the other 2 men, one is a little older in the middle of the Shin level, and the other is a little younger in the early stage of the Shin level. This makes Yi Tian wonder why there are so many mountain people gathering in Nanhai recently. Is there something big happening here that he doesn't know? Elder martial brother, I want that little squirrel. At this time, the girl stares at the little squirrel, turns her head and looks at the man on the right side. Little squirrel seems to be aware of a kind of bad breath, hurriedly get up from the ground, 3 or 2 jump to Yi Tian's shoulder, hide behind Yi Tian's head, nervously poke out a small head, secretly looking at the situation. This little thing is really spiritual. The man, after looking at the little squirrel, was also a little surprised at its spirituality, and then said, "This little squirrel, do you sell it?" "Not for sale." The cicada shook his head and responded crisply. The man heard this and looked back at the young girl. "I don't care. No matter what you do, elder martial brother Lin, I will get this lovely little squirrel." The girl tooted her mouth and said rudely, "My younger martial sister has a crush on this little squirrel. Give me a price." Elder martial brother Lin, hearing this, turns his head and stares at Yi Tian. "You may not have heard her just now. I'll say it again. We don't sell this squirrel." Yi Tianping looks at elder martial brother Lin quietly. He is neither humble nor arrogant. Elder martial brother Lin's brow can't help wrinkling. He stares at Yi Tian with a look that seems not good. "Elder martial brother, look at the stone statue in his hand. Isn't it strange?" And at this time, another man made a color to elder martial brother Lin and said in a deep voice. Elder martial brother Lin immediately glanced at the stone statue in Yi Tian's hand, and then said, "Friend, can you let me have a look at the stone Buddha in your hand?" As soon as he heard the stone statue, the squirrel immediately became nervous. His 2 forepaws tightly grasped Yi Tian's collar, and his eyes showed a strong color of prayer. "What if I say no?" Yi Tian reaches out his hand and flicks the head of the little squirrel, then looks at the man, with a cool tone. Elder Marshal Brother Lin's brow was wrinkled to a pimple. Elder Marshal Brother, don't talk nonsense with this guy. In my opinion, since the surrounding villagers say that every night, there will be a bright light in this forest, and we searched all over the forest, but we didn't find anything strange. In my opinion, maybe the answer lies in the stone statue in this boy's hand. Another man hears the sound and yells at Elder Marshal Brother Lin. Younger Marshal Brother Mo is right. Elder Marshal Brother Lin nodded slightly, then calmly looked at Yi Tian and said, "Since you don't have a toast, you can only have a fine drink." Brush. The next second, Elder Marshal Brother Lin's steps move, quickly approach Yi Tian, and punch Yi Tian's chest. "Then let me see how strong you are." Yi Tian sneers indifferently and bravely, bullying his body forward with the same fist. At this moment, Yi Tian's heart is not happy with these three people. If you don't ask for it, you have to snatch it. It's too overbearing. But think about it again, the mountain people I met, in addition to Yunfei and Yanbing, it seems that none of them is not very overbearing. Haha, if you want to compete with Elder Marshal Brother Lin, you can't help yourself. Seeing Yi Tian's action, the younger Marshal Brother Mo immediately sneers and thinks that he seems to have seen the sad picture of Yi Tian being hit by Elder Marshal Brother Lin, flying upside down and coughing up blood. Bang! But at this time, along the position where Yi Tian and Elder Marshal Brother Lin are fighting, there is a dull sound immediately, followed by a scene that makes younger Marshal Brother Mo feel extremely incredible. See, double fists crisscross, really someone like broken line kite inverted fly out. But that person is not Yi Tian that he thinks, but Elder Marshal Brother Lin. What's more, Elder Marshal Brother Lin's right arm is bursting open now, revealing his white bones. After landing, his mouth spits blood, and the picture is terrifying and ferocious. You. Younger Marshal Brother Mo rubs his eyes hard, only to find that this scene is not an illusion, but a reality. He steps back involuntarily and looks at Yi Tian in horror. I'm afraid the so-called penalty bar is a fake bar mixed with water. It doesn't seem very good. Yi Tian sweeps his eyes at Elder Marshal Brother Lin, who has collapsed to the ground. He smiles and ponders coldly. I warn you, don't be proud of your accomplishments. We can't be provoked by people like you. At this time, when the young girl saw that Elder Marshal Brother Lin was injured, she was a little flustered, but her pride was not reduced. She pointed to Yi Tian with a very bad attitude. Is it? Yi Tian pick eyebrow light smile, and then coldly weigh, in this case, I'll let you see, I this kind of person that don't mix water penalty wine is what taste. Pop. Yi Tian a arrow step forward, backhand as a palm, heavy pumping hit in the young girl's cheek. Poof. As soon as the palm fell, 5 bright red bloodstains immediately floated on the young girl's face, and a touch of blood poured out from the corner of her mouth. You, how dare you hit me? The young girl covers her face and looks at Yi Tian in disbelief. What about hitting you? Yi Tian light smile, backhand as a palm, heavy smoke in the young girl's other cheek. In a flash, there were 5 bright red finger marks on the young girl's left and right cheeks, snow-white skin and red finger marks. Compared with each other, it looked as strange and desolate as the red plum in the snow. Yi Tian is kind to the right person, but this young girl is unruly and willful. When she sees something she likes, she wants others to give it to her. If others don't give it to her, she has to compete with her classmates. Such a girl, how can not teach a good lesson? Wow! The young girl covers her cheek and stares at Yi Tian with blood-red eyes. After a long time, she starts to cry at the top of her voice. It's over. You're over. You dare to beat younger Marshal's sister. You must not even know how you died. Younger Marshal Brother Mo watched the scene in a daze. After a long time, he pointed to Yi Tian and yelled as if he had just reacted. Yes? If you don't want me to know how to die, I'll let you know first what life is not like death. With a faint smile, Yi Tian leaps forward and slaps Mo Shitty's elixir field with a palm, which destroys his cultivation. This younger Marshal Brother Mo is really not a good thing. He was there just now to encourage Elder Marshal Brother Lin to rob the treasure and kill people. You abandoned my accomplishments. Younger Marshal Brother Mo howled bitterly. His eyes were fixed on Yi Tian. Deep in his eyes, he was full of indignation, reluctance, and despair. As far as the people on the mountain are concerned, it's no different from death if their accomplishments are abandoned. Even, as Yi Tian Gang said, life is not like death at all. You are a good means. You hurt me and ruined my younger martial brother's cultivation, but you should not hit my younger martial sister. I tell you, Tianxinzon will not give up on this matter today. My master and mother will definitely ask you for an explanation. Elder martial brother Lin didn't expect that Yi Tianxia's hand would be so fierce. He stared at Yi Tian and said in a deep voice, Tianxinzon? Yi Tian hears these 3 words, eyebrow tip tiny a pick. Whatever you want. Yi Tianping smiles, then looks at the crying young girl and says coldly, what do you Tianxinzon do in Nanhai City? I tell you, if you dare to beat me, my parents will not let you go. I want them to frustrate you. I also want to torture the little squirrel, pull out all its hair, pour asphalt on it, let it live like death. And the little black girl, I'm going to take the bottom of the pot and rub her into a charcoal block to make her look like a charcoal all her life. The young girl stares at Yi Tian with red eyes. Her eyes are full of anger. Small squirrel listened to this evil spirit tinting words, grasped Yi Tian's clothes back collar, whole body straight shiver. As for the cicada, she was not afraid. Instead, her eyes dribbled around, scanning the girl's face and body. She didn't smile well. It seemed that she was going to start first. So vicious at a young age. It seems that I've just taught you a lesson, but it's still light. Yi Tian listens to the vicious words, his eyes are cold, bullying forward, backhand is a few heavy slaps, pumping in her face, hit her face peach blossom open, corner of the mouth blood flow, teeth are pumping away a few. Woo 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 woo. The young girl was almost beaten silly, squatting on the ground, covering her cheek, crying. It's not wrong to be unruly, but it's your fault to be vicious. In this world, not everyone can tolerate your malice. What's more, before you do this kind of vicious thing, think about it first. What would you do if someone did this to you? Yi Tian looks at the young girl coldly, her hand is slightly raised, which makes her shiver. After holding her head, she slowly puts down her hand and says one word at a time. The young girl shrunk and nodded. Her eyes were full of fear. She was afraid of Yi Tianru. Why do you come to Nanhai City? After Leaf Day swept one eye toward her, continue away. Not long ago, we heard a news that 7 colors of clouds and haze appeared in the sea area of Nanhai City, which is very similar to the sign of mirage opening in the legend, so we came to check 1 or 2 in advance. How dare the young girl hide it now? Mirage? Yi Tian's eyebrows are slightly wrinkled and he doubts. It is said that a long time ago, there was a place for cultivating immortals overseas, where many powerful mountain people lived. Later, those people on the mountain soared and left a cave without a master. After many years, it would appear once, just like a mirage, so it was called mirage. If you enter a mirage, those who have a good chance will not only get the elixir, but also have a good fortune. Although the young girl didn't understand why Yi Tian asked such a simple question, she still said. On Earth, there was a period of cultivation civilization. Hearing the young girl's words, Yi Tian became more convinced that he was coming to the earth, and his guess came out of his heart. However, he couldn't understand why that period of civilization was lost in the long river of history. He didn't even mention a word. Only the mountain people were left. Is it the decline of civilization after its prosperity or something else? But Yi Tian knows that these things are too far away for him today. However, there is something interesting about this mirage. If it is true, as the young girl said, there may be something he needs in the mirage. What's more, it also explains why Yunfei and Mu Qingqing did not choose to leave after attending the gambling fair outside the island, but continued to stay in Nanhai City. Presumably, the 2 sisters are also exploring the information related to mirage. I'm done with my questions. Go away. Yi Tian inquires about the things he wants to know, hands a swing, cold way. Hearing this, the young girl immediately ran down the mountain with elder martial brother Lin and younger martial brother Mo, who had been abandoned. If I don't get revenge today, I'll swear not to be a man. After walking out for some distance, the young girl touches her hot and painful cheek and looks back at Yi Tian's position. she is full of resentment and gnashes her teeth. We are not the opponent of this man. We'd better inform Master and let them come to avenge us. Elder Martial Brother Lin nodded and then looked at Qi Shaowan. Qi Shaowan nodded hard, but the injury on her cheek made her show her teeth, but the color of resentment in the bottom of her eyes was more intense. This place has been targeted. It's not a good place. Would you like to practice there? At the same time, in the forest, Yi Tian looks at the squirrel and says slowly. A language falls, the little squirrel can't help a zhang, stunned to look around the forest. It grew up here, full of nostalgia, even in the yard of Yi Tian rub aura, but never thought of leaving here. Can think of just Qi Shaowan those vicious words, it cannot help but also some uneasy, do not know what to do. Bird's eye on Gulin, fish's thought on Guyuan. My proposal really forces you. Well, if you want to stay here, you can keep it. If you don't come to my yard one day, I will come here to have a look. Seeing this, Yi Tian smiles and plans to put the statue back into the cave and leave. Squeak squeak. Seeing this, little squirrel moves forward in a hurry. He jumps up to Yi Tian's shoulder, grabs his collar tightly and looks up pitifully. It seems that he is afraid that Yi Tian will leave him. Well, you can practice in my yard in the future. Yi Tian rubbed the squirrel's head with a smile, and then helped him to pick up the stone statue of Brahma. In 3 or 2 steps, he walked out of the mountain forest. More than 20 minutes later, Yi Tian went back to the rental house. When he opened the door, he saw Su Qingjing sitting in the yard, staring at the sky, and along the corner of his eye, a little bit of tears were slowly flowing down. You're back? When Su Qing heard the sound of opening the door, he quickly got up, wiped the corners of his eyes, and forced out a smile. Only in adversity can one see one's heart. Leaf Day saw Su Qing one eye, light way. He can guess what Su Qing went through without asking anything. I'm afraid it's just the so-called uncles in the past who are indifferent to her now. The better ones are just hidden, the worse ones may say something ugly to her. After his parents died, he had already experienced all this. And Su Qing, a girl, and a beautiful girl will experience, I'm afraid it will be more piercing than what he experienced. Su Qing had a sour nose and nodded. She thought that those uncles and elders used to be brothers with Su Zhaoyun, which seemed to be a life-changing friendship. Now that her father died, she was the only one left. As long as she spoke, those uncles and elders would help her, not to mention find a way to avenge her, but also find a good job for her. But I didn't expect that today. She can't remember how many times she shut the door. Some guys, in particular, were disgusted. They pretended that they wanted to help her, but after 3 or 2 sentences, they revealed their ugliness and asked her to repay them with her body. All these made her feel cold and disgusted. Sorry. A little later, Su Qing looked at Yi Tian apologetically and bowed with red eyes. At the beginning, when Yi Tian's parents died and Yi Tian repeatedly ran into a wall, although she sympathized with Yi Tian, she also had a lot of ridicule for Yi Tian in her heart. She felt that no matter Yi Tian or his parents, she had not made a friend for so many years. But until now, she realized that friends are the icing on the cake, but there may not be 1 or 2 of them and 1000000. And all this naturally made her feel ashamed for laughing at Yi Tian. No need, you don't have to worry too much. I won't kick you out until you find a job and settle down. Yi Tian waved his hand and said faintly. Thank you. Su Cheng looks at Yi Tian gratefully, and then his eyes fall on the little squirrel on Yi Tian's shoulder. His eyes brighten immediately, and he is surprised and says, what a beautiful little squirrel. Is this the pet Yi Tian bought? It's not a pet. It's a friend of mine. Yi Tian thought about the identity of the little squirrel and said slowly. In a word, little squirrel is the first creature he saw on the earth that is really practicing. According to Feng Cun's theory, as long as he sets foot on the road of cultivation, he can call his friends. Little squirrel heard Yi Tian's words, immediately some uncontrollable complacency, big tail Pufan shook, 2 small pink claws fork in the waist, a little small. Is this the so-called meeting more people? I like dogs more, willing to make friends with animals, but also not with people? Su Qing looks at Yi Tian and thinks that Yi Tian likes this little squirrel too much. He reaches out his hand and touches its head carefully. When he sees that the little squirrel is leaning his head and stares at her with ruby eyes, he feels that he is going to be sprouted. He looks at Yi Tian curiously and says, "What's its name?" Hearing this, Yi Tian immediately stops talking and looks at the little squirrel. Gigi. Little squirrel is also some silly eyes, confused called twice. It's not named yet, just call it. Yi Tian's eyes turned, and then fell on the chestnuts in the living room coffee table. He chuckled and said, "It's called chestnuts." Squeak, hearing the name, the little squirrel immediately hopped on Yi Tian's shoulder, as if celebrating that he had a name. Chestnuts, chestnuts, little chestnut. Hearing the sound, Su-Ching reached out to scratch the snow-white belly of the little squirrel. Little chestnut seemed to be very ticklish. When she scratched her, she immediately rolled on the ground. When the cicada saw the picture, he ran to it. Two women, big and small, pestered the chestnuts to make fun of them. For a moment, the yard was full of the laughter of girls and the squeaking of squirrels, adding to the smell of fireworks. Yi Tian looks at the lively picture in the yard, but he doesn't feel noisy. On the contrary, he has a strange peace of mind. At this moment, he suddenly felt that there was something like home in this small yard. "I don't know what's the secret of this statue." Chi Xiaowan said that the villagers nearby said that there would be light in the woods at night. Maybe the mystery of the statue can only be solved at night. Yi Tian stares at the stone statue, and then puts it in the position of the spirit-gathering array near the eye of the array. In this way, when Xiaoli Zi sleeps, he can stay with the stone statue of Sanskrit, which will be good for him to improve his cultivation. The next thing to do is to recover the damaged source as soon as possible, and then refine the spring elixir to help Lu Hua get rid of the cancer, so that the Shixiang family can no longer live so timidly, like walking on thin ice. After doing everything well, Yi Tian goes back to the spirit-gathering array, half leans on the sofa, arouses the aura of heaven and earth, gathers his own body, and slowly repairs the damaged source of life in his body. A day without words, soon it was evening. As long as Yi Tian is at home, the dinner will naturally be eaten at his home. But this time, there were Su-Ching and Xiaoli Zi. It's just that what this guy eats is not human food, but the chestnuts that he brought before. "I'll get a job as soon as possible and give you the rent and living expenses." After dinner, Su-Cheng went to the kitchen and learned to wash the dishes with Chen Chang. When she came back, she looked down at her and Yi Tian's long figure pulled by the night and whispered. Yi Tian didn't speak and nodded at will. Now he is not short of money. To be exact, he still has plenty of pocket. Whether Su-Ching pays rent and living expenses or not will not have much influence on him. But he will not tell Su-Ching these words. Because he knew that the last thing he wanted, whether he was in the past or Su-Ching now, was the sympathy and compassion of others. After returning to the rental house, Su-Ching goes to the bathroom to wash. Yi Tian goes back to the living room and looks at the stone statue of Brahmatsu, only to find that it is not abnormal. Xiaoli Zi seems to see Yi Tian's doubts. Gigi barks twice and then points to the sky outside the house. "You mean it changes in the moonlight?" Yi Tian looks at Xiaoli Zi's expression and takes the stone Buddha out of the room and puts it under the moonlight. Stars, a silver plate on the moon, quietly hanging. And when the light of the stars and the moon fell on the stone statue of Fanzi, along the head of the sleeping stone statue of Fanzi, a circle of gorgeous light suddenly appeared. When Xiaoli Zi saw the aperture, he immediately moved forward in 3 or 2 steps towards the stone statue of Fanzi. After bowing, he leaned his body against the stone statue of Fanzi, showing some sleepiness in his eyes. At this time, Yi Tian also saw that the halo behind the head of the Fanzi stone statue poured into Xiaoli's body after Xiaoli approached the Fanzi stone statue. "I see." Yi Tian nodded slightly, and his divine thoughts went to the stone Buddha. Bamihong. When the divine thoughts enter the depths of the stone Buddha, Yi Tian immediately hears the sound of 7 words of truth. That voice, grand and loud, such as straight into the depths of the soul, even Yi Tian, have a kind of soul tremor feeling. This is actually a stone statue of Dea Fanzi. When Yi Tian heard the sound, he could not help shaking his tongue, and his eyes twinkled. Among the 7-word mantra, only the chanting of Changdao and Fanzi can have such effect. And even in the square-inch spiritual realm, the number of Changdao Fanzi is not too much. That kind of cultivation realm is similar to the great friars in Yupu realm. Although the sound of this statue is far different from that of the real Taoist Fanzi in Fengsuan spiritual realm, the Taoist rhyme is the same. On the earth, there was Chung Dea Fanzi who was comparable to the great friar of Yupu realm. Since Brahma can become Tao here, is there anyone who practices other ways of becoming Tao who once lived on the earth? What kind of unknown civilization is there? Yi Tian looks at the stone Buddha in bewilderment. He only feels that the blue planet under his feet seems to be shrouded in a layer of fog and doubt, which makes him feel that his original understanding of the earth seems a little shallow and ridiculous. The stone Buddha of Fanzi was hit by the wind and rain, and was attacked by time, some of which were seriously damaged. The vision of the 7-word mantra recited by Fanzi only lasted for half an hour. When Su Qing came out of the bath, the vision no longer existed. However, as Yi Tian felt, even if it was only half an hour a day, it was enough to help the little squirrel open his mind and set foot on the path of Buddhist practice. Rest early. Yi Tian sees Su Qing and nods to her. After Su Qing returns to his room, he begins to practice on the eyes of the array. Xiao Lizi was going to sleep on the sofa, but when he saw Yi Tian's appearance, he hopped into his arms and became a ball on his body. In my sleep, I didn't know what I had dreamed. I turned my mouth as if I was tasting something. Yi Tian did not drive the squirrel away, but let it lie like this. Leaving the forest, the little guy must be uneasy and want to find a place where he can feel at ease. One night without words, soon to the next morning. Yi Tian and Su Qing went to school after they had a meal at Ju Qing's home. Su Qing said that they would go out to look for a job again. As for Xiao Lizi, of course, he followed the cicada and stayed in the yard to practice. But when Yi Tian Gang came to the school gate, he saw Niu Su standing there, as if waiting for someone. Yi Tian Zhen didn't care about this guy. He glanced at him and was ready to leave. Yi Tian, does Su Qing live with you? But to Yi Tian's surprise, Niu Su didn't know where he had the courage. Instead, he ran to Yi Tian and stood 2 feet away from him. He asked in a low voice. Yes or no, what does it have to do with you? Yi Tian casually swept an eye to Niu Su, light way. If so, I suggest you let Su Cheng move away immediately, otherwise, don't blame me for being rude to you. I warn you, this time, I invited a real master, a master who can punch a hole in the tree. Niu Su looks at Yi Tian and threatens. Leaves a smile, looked down at 4, turned and walked to a side of the French wutong tree beside the campus, then waved gently to Niu Su. Although Niu Su didn't understand what Yi Tian was going to do, he gritted his teeth and bravely walked over. Yi Tian waited for him to approach, immediately clenched his fist and raised it. Gentlemen use their mouths instead of their hands. Niu Su has been scared by Yi Tian. As soon as he hears this, he immediately holds his head in his hands, squats on the ground and says in a loud voice. Boom! The next second, he heard a dull noise in his ear, which made him shiver. But after waiting for a long time, he found that there was no pain in his body, and then he opened his eyes. But as soon as his eyes opened, his eyes were full of intense fear. Only saw that at the moment, Yi Tian's fist was actually missing all the trunk of the wutong tree. It looks like this tree is made of tofu. You found such a master? Yi Tian looks at Niu Su, sneers, and then goes forward. You don't come here. Niu Su was so excited that he immediately sits on the ground and shakes like a sieve chaff all over his body. He looks at Yi Tian in horror. He holds his body in 2 hands and climbs back crazily for fear that Yi Tian will give him such a blow. Waste. Yi Tian doesn't pay attention to Niu Su, who is already scared to pee. When he passes by, he gives a condescending glance and says faintly. Niu Su is swept by this eye, his body shakes, and a big pool of stinking yellow water flows out between his legs. Unexpectedly, he is scared to pee by Yi Tian's eye. I'll go. Look, Niu Su was scared by Yi Tian to pee his pants. Feng Shui turns around. Niu Su used to bully Yi Tian, but now it's Yi Tian who's picking up Niu Su. I'm afraid Yi Tian didn't want to see Niu Su before, and he was bullied by Niu Su at that time, but he wasn't scared to pee. This Niu Su seems to be quite strong, but he didn't expect that he was just scared and peed in his pants. His body is really empty. This scene soon attracted the attention of many students. When they saw that the ground under Niu Su's crotch was wet, they could not help scorning and sneering. With a word, Nyosu's face was red. He wanted to find a way to get in to avoid these eyes. What's so bad about that trash now? But in addition to panic, his heart is full of deep confusion and confusion. He felt that recently Tian was just like two people compared with before. Is this guy possessed by a monster? Even, in his mind, suddenly came up with a strange idea. Then, he thought of a more deadly thing. According to the legend, those monsters are lustful. Now Su Cheng and Yi Tian live together, isn't that sheep into tiger's mouth? Brother Wang, please help me to contact the expert you said. I want to ask him to do me a favor. It's easy to say such things as price. Nyosu thought of this, without any hesitation, immediately picked up the phone, pressed a few numbers, and when he got through, he gritted his teeth in a deep voice. Where will Yi Tian know Nyosu's mind, but even if he knows, he will only laugh. In school, as far as Yi Tian is concerned, it's not much different from practicing in another place. One day's class passed quickly. When Yi Tian came back to the rental house, he found that Su Qing had already come back. He looked very happy and was teasing Xiaolizi. I've got a job, and my salary is okay. Before long, I should be able to pay you rent and living expenses. Su Cheng saw Yi Tian and rushed to meet him happily. That's good. Yi Tian nodded at will, slightly surprised on his face. It's really unexpected that Su Qing can find a job so soon. And he has some doubts about whether Su Qing will be cheated by someone else. However, he is also lazy to point out these things. It is not without benefit that Su Qing can gain wisdom only by taking a cut. By the way, Yi Tian, I found a very strange thing. Xiaolizi seems to be a little too clever. I always feel that he can understand me and it's very picky. I eat apple and give it the core, but it doesn't eat it. Su Qing did not find Yi Tian strange, but surprised. Squeak squeak. At this time, Xiaolizi is also jumping up and down, big eyes angrily looking at Su Qing, seems to be indignant that she even gave her garbage to eat. This little guy has a special variety and is very smart. If he wants to eat fruit in the future, he will be given a complete one. I can afford the money for a few fruits now. Seeing this, Yi Tian nods to Xiaolizi with a smile, and then looks at Su Qingdao. Squeak squeak. Little Chestnut's big eyes were full of joy, scratching her ears. Well. Su Qing nodded helplessly, but he was surprised. It's strange that squirrels don't even eat fruit kernels. But compared with Xiaolizi, her eyes to Yi Tian were more surprised and curious. Although she only stayed here for 2 nights, she always felt vaguely that compared with Yetian in the past, Yetian now is just like two people who have been reborn. Ding-ling-ling. At this time, the mobile phone of Yi Tian's pocket rings suddenly. His eyes sweep by. He sees that it is an unfamiliar number. After hesitating for a while, he chooses to connect. Are you free tonight? Can we have dinner together? As soon as the phone was connected, there came the sound of mandala. This woman is rich so soon? When Yi Tian heard the speech, he could not help but look surprised. After pondering for a while, he thought it was better to see mandala. After all, he brought the woman to Nanhai City. If she was forced by life to commit crimes in Nanhai City, it would be her own sin. Yes. You can fix the place. After that, we'll see you there. Thinking of this, Yi Tian was asked by Mandala for dinner. Is this girl Yi Tian's girlfriend now? Although Su Qing pretended to be teasing Xiaolizi, he pricked up his ears. When he heard that there was a beautiful female voice on the other side of the phone, his eyes could not help showing some loss and sadness. I'm going to go out. You can have dinner at the house of Zhu Qing yourself. In Su Qing's wishful thinking, Yi Tian has hung up the phone, looking at Su Qingdao. Well. Su Qing nodded, but then shook his head in a hurry and said, Can I go with you? Now she is very curious about what the girl on the other side of the phone looks like. In other words, she wants to know where this girl is better than her and can become Yi Tian's girlfriend. Together? Yi Tian hears the sound, can't help but have some doubts. I haven't had a good meal outside for a long time since my father died. Su Qing hurriedly found a reason, explained a sentence, and then said, If you feel inconvenient, it's okay. There's nothing inconvenient. Let's do it together. Yi Tian heard Su Qing's words and nodded at will. Eat, 2 people eat, 3 people eat, big deal, he put Su Qing that share of the meal money supply mandala is. Well, wait for me. When Su Qing heard this, he laughed and rushed into the room. More than 10 minutes later, when Yi Tian was impatient, Su Qing finally came out. Obviously, Su Qing gang had just been dressed up in the room, not only painted eyebrows, but also lipstick, and played a little blush, and even his hair seemed to be curled up with curly sticks. These women are really troublesome. They just have a meal, and they have to fight. Yi Tian was speechless for a while, but he nodded and said, let's go. Su Qing cleverly nodded and followed Yi Tian. More than 20 minutes later, they arrived at the fat restaurant of Mandala. When Yi Tian arrived, Mandala had been waiting at the door of the hotel. When he saw that Yi Tian had a girl with him, he could not help looking at Yi Tian strangely. Hello, my name is Su Qing. Nice to meet you. At this time, Su Qing had already quickly walked past and extended his hand to Mandala. This girl is really beautiful. No wonder Yi Tian likes it. As Su Qing stretched out his hand, he looked at Mandala, and his eyes faintly lost. On the way here, she has been quietly looking forward to it, hoping that the girl Yi Tian wants to see is very ordinary, or ugly. If they stand together, they can be compared by her. But now it seems that she is obviously thinking too much. Mandala can be said to be no worse than her, and her figure is even better than her. Nice to meet you. My name is Mandala. Mandala casually shook hands with Su Qing, then looked at Yi Tian, pointed to a neighborhood not far away and said, I rented a house in the neighborhood. If you want to find me, go to 403, Unit 1, Building 3 to find me. When Su Qing heard this, he couldn't help feeling even more depressed. Then she thought that the meaning of a woman telling her specific address to a man was self-evident. She was a little curious about how this girl got the strange name of Mandala. Yi Tian and I live together. We are roommates. If you have time, you can come to his place to play with us. When Su Qing thought of this, he couldn't help looking at Mandala. Yes. Mandala nodded at random, and there was no fluctuation on her face. The relationship between her and Yi Tian is so good that even if a girl and Yi Tian rent together, does she still trust Yi Tian? Seeing Mandala's expression, Su Qing couldn't help feeling more and more bitter. Can we have a word alone? I have something to tell you. At this time, Mandala walked up to Yi Tian, looked a little embarrassed and said, Yes. Yi Tian looks at Mandala and thinks that what she wants to say may have something to do with Linglong Ball. He nods and then says to Su Qing, Go ahead and order. I'll have a word with her. I'll go in and find you later. Don't even talk to me? It seems that I really came to the wrong place to be a lightbulb. Su Qing nodded, looked at Yi Tian and Mandala, and then walked into the restaurant. What's the matter, say it? If it's related to Linglong Ball, maybe you'll be disappointed. I've studied it for a while, and it will take at least half a month to open it. After Su Qing left, Yi Tian looked at the Mandala road. I've given you the Linglong Ball. When will you untie it? Just tell me. Don't worry. Mandala shook his head and said, I'm looking for you today, but there's something else. What's the matter? Yi Tian looks at the Mandala perplexedly and says. He couldn't think of anything else Mandala could do to find himself. I want to borrow some money from you. The money I got from those 2 guys before, after paying the rent and deposit, has been used up. From yesterday to now, I haven't eaten a meal. I wanted to go out and get some money, but you told me not to do evil again. I really can't find a way, so... Mandala looked more and more embarrassed, lowered his head and lowered his tone a few degrees. It was to borrow money. Yi Tian is dumbfounded. He says that Mandala has just arrived in the South China Sea for 2 days. How can he stand firm and invite himself to dinner? It turns out that eating is fake and borrowing money is real. It seems that they really match each other. At the same time, Su Qing in the hotel, looking at the Mandala shyly standing in front of Yi Tian, and Yi Tian's face is full of bright smile, his eyes cannot help but be full of deep loss and bitterness. Yes, I'll lend you 20,000 yuan first. Is your mobile phone number an account? Yi Tian nodded with a smile, then took out his mobile phone and said. When I get a job, I'll give it back to you. Mandala looks at Yi Tian gratefully and says. After being free, she thought that such a life should be very comfortable. But she forgot that this kind of comfortable life needs money, and she has no other way to earn money except fighting and killing. And she didn't expect that the rent of the house was so expensive. 3 months' rent plus a month's deposit emptied her. As for the job, she tried to find a few, but others just asked her what she had done. When she saw her faltering and didn't know how to answer, it was over. If Yi Tian doesn't want to borrow money, she really doesn't know what to do next. Well, wait until you get a job. Yi Tian casually smiled, and then said, go to eat first. Although he did not think that Mandala was looking for himself to borrow money, in fact, he still had a happy idea about it. At least, when Mandala was desperate, he didn't want to do evil for money, but to ask him for help. This shows that this once fierce female killer has really changed a lot. Is that girl your girlfriend? At this time, Mandala looked into the hotel and asked Yi Tian curiously. They're looking at me. Su Qing, who is looking out of the window, looks back at the scene in front of her and then pretends to pick up the menu. However, her eyes are hazy and can't see anything. Oh, it's not the famous little princess of Su family, the flower of Nanhai University. How can you, such a noble little princess, come to our inferior place to eat? But at this time, along not far away, suddenly a few pretty girls came over. The leader looked at Su Cheng condescending, strange voice, strange airway. When Su Qing heard this, he looked up, and his face immediately showed the color of confusion. These girls are all her high school classmates, and they have a good family, but they are worse than the Su family. In the past, because of their good family, they looked down on other students in the class and were severely taught by her. Obviously, after hearing that the Su family was finished, the girls were taking revenge on themselves for the past. Xiaoxue, don't make fun of me. The Su family is bankrupt. Now there is no little princess. She is Cinderella at most. Besides, they have dropped out of school now. It's not a school flower. It's a joke. As soon as the words fell, another girl answered immediately, then looked at Su Qing with a smile and said, Su de joke, do you think I'm right? Su Qing held the menu hand tightly. His lower lip was bitten with bloodstains. Along the corner of his eye, there were tears spinning around. Su Da's joke, how can you make money? I remember that you seemed to be very good at speaking before, and you were very eloquent in speaking, such as comparing heart to heart. You were better than us, and you didn't do our business and so on. But even so, Xiaoxue didn't intend to let Su Qing go. Looking at her, she sneered coldly. Xiaoxue, you really are. People's family is bankrupt and their father is dead. Can't you let them cry twice? Another girl, hearing the sound, said with a smile, pretending to be speechless, raised her hand to cover her mouth and said to Su Qing, oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to poke your scar. Although the girl said sorry in her mouth, she didn't feel sorry in her eyes. On the contrary, she had a strong color of schadenfreude. Big joke, I remember before, you asked us to apologize to those poor people and let us go. Today, if you want us to let you go, it's very simple. Kneel down and kowtow to us, saying that you have done wrong before, we'll let you go. Well, are we generous? Xiaoxue looks at Su Qing with a bad smile and says bitterly. Su Qing did not say a word, just two hands tightly together, fingertips pierced the palm unaware. She very much hoped that she could not shed tears in front of these people, but the tears still flowed down. She's not my girlfriend, she just lives with me for some reason. At the same time, Yi Tian toward Mandala light explanation. So it is. Mandala nodded. She felt relieved. Then she took a puff from the corner of her eyes and chin to the restaurant. She said, your friend seems to be in trouble. Yi Tian hears the sound and looks back. When he sees that Su Qing is being besieged by several girls, his brow turns into a knot in one's heart. Come on, let's see what's going on. Mandala smiles at Yi Tian, and then they walk towards the restaurant. Big joke, we'll give you a minute to think about it, either kneel down and apologize to us, or we'll help you to apologize to us. At this time, Xiaoxue impatiently plucked her fingers, looked at Su Qing and said with a faint smile. Hearing this, the other girls immediately showed a bad smile on their faces. They rubbed their hands and fists one by one. It seemed that they were going to press Su Qing to the ground and humiliate her. What are you doing? When Yi Tian heard this conversation, he frowned and said coldly. Yi Tian. When Su Qing heard Yi Tian's voice, he was immediately overjoyed and looked up at Yi Tian. Oh, hello, I say, how can Su Dijoke afford a restaurant now? It turns out that he's colluding with her old friend again. When Xiao Xue heard the word Yi Tian, her eyes changed. After glancing back at Yi Tianxia, she sneered, how can I remember that there seems to be something wrong with your family, your parents are dead, and the company is bankrupt? Tut tut, what a miserable couple. Oh, no, I remember that the Su family seems to have retired. Why are you mixed up again? Yi Tian coldly looks at the girl named Xiaoxue, and her eyes gradually show some chill. He doesn't care about the intrigue between the girls, and lets Su Qing feel the warmth and coldness of human feelings, which will help her in her future life. He is ready to watch as long as these girls don't go too far. But this girl, if she wants to burn the fire on herself, he can't tolerate it. Young master in distress, plus a daughter in distress, a couple of ghosts who died of their parents. Tut tut, this is really stirring up the spirit, turning 1,000 times. Xiaoxue didn't find anything different about Yi Tian at all. She still kept sneering at Yi Tian and then said, you poor loser, wanna help Su Dijoke? Well, you kneel down and kowtow to me. Maybe I can think about it and forgive Su Dijoke once. Mandala hands in front of the chest, looking at the snow mockingly. She's seen people who want to die, but she's never seen people who want to die like that. This little girl is not old, and she's an ordinary person. But she's braver than the master of Yuan family. I'm afraid she's going straight to the so-called heaven level. I'm in a good mood today. If you kneel down and kowtow to me, and then apologize to Su Qing, I can let you go. The Leaf Day indifferently looked toward the light snow eye, light way. Stinky loser, you think so well? I'll give you some color. You really think how great you are. If you want me to kneel down for you, you garbage won't pee and look in the mirror. When Xiaoxue hears Yi Tian's words, her eyes are immediately fierce. She steps forward and raises her hand to slap Yi Tian in the face. Water transport. At this time, Yi Tian's eyes were cold, his lips were slightly open and closed, and his fingers were gently moved. In a flash, a crystal-clear water ball suddenly appeared on the top of Xiaoxue's head. Boom! The next second, the water ball suddenly hit, heavy hit on the girls. Just for a moment, several girls all over the body, all into a drowned chicken. The hair that has been carefully arranged is already disheveled, like a drowned chicken, the bright makeup is washed white and red by the water, and it looks as terrible as ghosts and goblins. Not only that, the strength of the water polo is extremely heavy. Hit the moment, will be a few girls hit a soft knees, directly kneeling in the puddle. What's the matter? Su Qing looked at the scene in front of him in a dazed way. He felt relieved, but he was puzzled. The restaurant is so open, the air is dry, and there is no water pipe on it. How did that big water ball just come out like magic? Although he didn't know what was going on, he faintly felt that all this seemed to have something to do with Yi Tian. What have you done? The girls, who have been hit by the water polo, look up, tremble, fear and anger at Yi Tian, gnash their teeth, and then get up to fight with Yi Tian. I said you could get up without apologizing? Yi Tian coldly looks at Xiaoxue and other girls. His mind spreads and he says coldly, brush. As soon as the words fell, Xiaoxue's girls immediately felt their heads tremble and followed closely. In front of them, Yi Tian had become blue-faced in fangs, and his whole body was covered with dark red bloodlights. He stood upright, just like a demon. Ghost, ghost, ghost. This scene of fear made Xiaoxue tremble and fall into the water. Immediately, the white trousers she was wearing spread a large pool of yellow. Then she went into the water and made her companion stink. It's useless rubbish. In a word, it's diabetes insipidus. Mandala shook his head speechless and said scornfully, sorry. At this time, Yi Tian looks at Xiaoxue and continues to speak coldly. I'm sorry, we know we're wrong. Please forgive us. Xiaoxue, without any hesitation, kowtows to Yi Tian and Su Qing for mercy like crazy. Just, her head fell, just fell in the puddle that had been soaked in urine. For a moment, the whole person was like a fierce diver into the pit, from foot to head. Let's go. Tian swept his eyes indifferently towards Xiaoxue, and then winked at Su Qing. The taste of the restaurant has been tossed by the light snow so that it can't be smelled at the moment. How can people have the appetite to continue to eat here? Hearing this, Su Qing gets up in a hurry and follows Tian with his bag. He looks like a little daughter-in-law. Thank you. Out of the restaurant, Su Qing toward Tian even thanks, originally full of tears on the face, but also more smile. You're welcome. They've gone too far. Tian shook his head faintly, then looked at Su Qing's eyes and said, however, from now on, you should get used to such things, and if you encounter them again, don't forget that you have hands and feet besides your mouth. The more you are afraid of the bad guys, the more they feel that you are weak and can be bullied, and the worse you will become. I remember. Su Qing nodded hard, indicating that he remembered Tian's words. Tian didn't say anything more. Instead, he took Su Qing and Mandala to find another restaurant and simply ate something. I wish you and Tian happiness. After eating, Su Qing deliberately slowed down, and after walking side by side with Mandala, he slowly said with a bitter expression. You may think too much. I'm not Tian's girlfriend. Mandala heard Tian's words, stunned, and then couldn't help laughing. Su Qing was stunned and looked at the Mandala. But inexplicably, her heart at the moment is a kind of unspeakable ease. If he has a girlfriend, I think that girl must be 10 times better than me. Mandala laughed, followed by another sentence. Su Qing's heart sank when he heard the sound. In her opinion, Mandala is already excellent. If a girl is 10 times better than her, how excellent it should be. Read here, Su Qing's eyes can't help looking forward to the front of Tian's back. All of a sudden, she found that, I don't know when, all she could do was to look up at Tian's back. No matter how hard to catch up, she couldn't catch up with him. A moment later, Tian and Su Qing went back to the rental house by car. As for Mandala, they went back to her rental house. A night without words, soon to the next morning. Early in the morning, after eating breakfast, Su Qing was full of expectation and said that she would go to work where she found a job yesterday. Tian didn't say anything. Instead, she congratulated her with kind words, hoping that everything would go well with her work. There was no class today, so Tian didn't go to school. After a night's interest adjustment, he basically recovered from the damage of his vitality. So he was ready to turn on the stove and help Lu Hua refine the spring elixir. When you reach the 3rd level of the cave, you can use Taoism, and the efficiency of alchemy can be improved a lot. After carefully handling the dew flower, Tian uses his hands to pinch the complicated seal formula, and mobilizes the spirit-gathering array of the room to gather the spirit on the pressure cooker. Fire next, he gently rebukes, condenses a flame in the void. The flame of natural gas, whether in temperature or spirituality, is far from comparable to the flame of Taoist art. The pills made from the flame of Taoist art have stronger efficacy and higher quality. Ding dong, not long after that, along the pressure cooker, there were bursts of the sound of quenching pills. After about 10 minutes, the Taoist flame went out. After cooling, Tian opened the lid of the pressure cooker. How fragrant! As soon as the lid of the pot was opened, the cicada, who had been staring at Tian's alchemy, immediately smelled a refreshing smell, and just smelled a mouthful of it, he felt clear-headed and full of vitality. After that, he could not help murmuring his praise. As for Xiao Zi, he stood up, his eyes widened, his mouth slightly opened, and his mouth was covered with saliva. Sure enough, the steps of refining pills will be much easier only when you get through the 3 levels of the cave. However, if it wasn't for my rich experience in alchemy, and Huichundan is a relatively basic pill, it would be a little difficult to make it successfully. Tian sweeps into the pressure cooker. When he sees 2 pieces of Huichundan lying quietly at the bottom of the stove, lingering with warm luster and emitting pure aura, he smiles on his tired face. According to his dandy's experience, the efficacy of these 2 pills has been refined to 80%. With these 2 vital pills, he believed that Lu Hua, who had advanced liver cancer, would be able to turn the corner. I have another use for these 2 pills. You can't take them. In the future, I will refine other pills and give them to you. When Tian reached for the pill, he saw the eyes of Cicada and Chestnut following his hands. When they dribbled around, he couldn't help laughing and playing with them. "Master, just take it away. I'm not a little chestnut. I'm not greedy at all." The cicada reached out and wiped a handful of saliva, pretending to be very free and easy. Squeak squeak. Xiao Lizi was not happy, pointed to the crystal-clear saliva at the corner of the cicada's mouth, jumped and yelled, as if to expose the cicada's true face to Yi Tian. "Two eaters." Seeing this, Yi Tian reaches for his hand and flicks at the heads of the two little guys. After that, he puts Huichundan into the porcelain vase and goes to the hospital. 10 minutes later, Yi Tian arrived at Nanhai Hospital. When he went to the hospital downstairs, he saw Shixiong sitting next to the flower bed at the door of the hospital building, looking at the front with dull eyes and tears in his eyes. "Stone, I didn't tell you, man, don't be so fond of pissing. How can't you remember?" Seeing this, Yi Tian goes to Shixiong and pats him on the shoulder. When Shixiong wakes up from his dullness, he says, "What's the matter? Is there not enough money?" "Or Yi, the doctor made a rounds this morning and called me out, saying that my mother's test report had come out. The cancer has spread. According to the doctor's estimation, even in the best case, she has only 3 months to live." Shixiong raised his arm and wiped the corners of his eyes. He choked. 3 months. Yi Tian is silent, he says, "How can Shixiong be so lost?" "So it is. Yi, my mother has worked hard all her life for me and shall die. I always want to wait for me to graduate and show her filial piety and let her enjoy a few days of happiness. But now, she hasn't enjoyed her happiness. Why is she leaving?" The man didn't flick his tears lightly, but before he was sad, Shixiong's tears were like a broken line. No matter how he wiped them, he couldn't stop them. What's more, he hit his head heavily, his eyes were red, like a trapped animal. "Yi, do you think my mother's illness is caused by too much work for me to go to school? Did I hurt my mother? If my mother has a problem, I might as well die." After a long time, Shixiong raised his head and looked at Yi Tian with blood-red eyes. Pop. Hearing this, Yi Tian slaps Shixiong's face with his backhand. He says in a cold voice, "In this case, just say it here. I don't want you to mention it again in my aunt's place." Shixiong holds his head and sobs. "Stone, if I say I can save my aunt, do you believe me?" Yi Tian looks down at Shixiong and says slowly. Hearing this, Shixiong looks up and stares at Yi Tian's eyes. He knows that Yi Tian doesn't like to joke, and he won't joke about such a big thing. "But my mother got it. It's cancer. Even if Yi Tian is very powerful, can he even cure cancer? Do you believe me?" Yi Tian looks at Shixiong and continues to ask. "I?" Shixiong was at a loss, but after a moment, he nodded and said, "I believe you." Shixiong thinks that if we have to find someone in this world, we can cure our mother. He thinks, that person is Yi Tian absolutely now. "Since you believe me, it's easy to do. I'll take care of it. Believe me, I won't let the tragedy happen to my aunt. I will let your family live happily together and give you a chance to show filial piety to your aunt and let her enjoy happiness." Hearing this, Yi Tian smiles and pats Shixiong on the shoulder. He says, "Come on, take me to see my aunt. Let me give the medicine I brought to my aunt." Shixiong nods and takes Yi Tian to the ward. "Yi Tian, here you are." When walking into the ward, there happened to be a doctor on the ward round. Lu Hua saw Yi Tian and said hello to Yi Tian while cooperating with the ward round doctor. "Mom, Yi Tian is here to deliver the medicine to you." Shixiong clenched Lu Hua's hand and said excitedly, "He has a way to cure you." Yi Tian looks at Shixiong with an excited look, and a smile rises from the corner of his mouth. No matter what kind of tragedy happened to Shixiong and Lu Hua in the last life, this life, since it has its own, will never let this tragedy happen again. Deliver the medicine? The doctor, who is on ward round, immediately looks awe-inspiring when he hears this sentence. When he looks at Yi Tian, his eyebrows are twisted into a knot in one's heart, and he says in a cold voice, "What medicine do you want? What nonsense! Do you think you are a fairy?" He said. "Hurry up and stop fooling around here. I tell you that since you live in the hospital, you can't take the medicine prescribed by outsiders. Otherwise, in case of any evil, you will be responsible for it yourself. Closely following, the ward-round doctor repeatedly waved his hand toward Tian, constantly urged the way. In the hospital, it's taboo to take medicine that is not prescribed by the hospital. If nothing happens, everyone will be happy, but if something goes wrong, it will be a big trouble. In particular, Lu Hua is suffering from advanced liver cancer, which is very serious. In case of taking medicine and getting worse, if the responsibility is put on the hospital, there will be a medical trouble. Don't worry, my medicine won't have any side effects, and it won't conflict with your treatment. And if there's any problem, I'll take full responsibility. Yi Tian understood the doctor's worry and said with a smile. Are you in charge? Who are you from? What's more, if the patient has a good or bad case, can you bear the responsibility? The ward-round doctor was aggressive and continued to ask in a cold voice. Yi Tian frowned and looked at Lu Hua. Although the ward-round doctor's attitude is not good, he is not wrong. He is not a family member of the patient. Lu Hua has the right to decide this matter. If she doesn't want to believe in herself, no matter how effective it is, it doesn't make any sense that she doesn't want to take it. Doctor, I don't think Yi Tian will cheat me. I believe him and would like to have a try. But at this time, Lu Hua looked at the doctor and said slowly. Although she doesn't have much contact with Yi Tian, she can feel that Yi Tian is not a joker from the only contact. Moreover, she is now able to live in the hospital and receive treatment because of Yi Tian's help. How can she not believe such a person? I tell you, don't be confused. The ward-round doctor frowned and looked at Lu Hua and said in a deep voice, what you have is advanced liver cancer. Now you only have 3 months of life. If you take medicine indiscriminately, we can't guarantee whether you can last for another 3 months. Brush. The doctor's words fall. Yi Tian and Shishong's eyes immediately fall on the doctor's body. Shishong didn't tell Lu Hua that she had only 3 months to live in order to make her feel at ease for treatment. Now the ward-round doctor tells the truth. He doesn't know what impact it will bring to Lu Hua's mind. Originally, I can only live another 3 months. Sure enough, after hearing the doctor's words, Lu Hua's face suddenly darkened. After a murmur, she looked at Shishong and Shishao, as if to engrave the appearance of their brother and sister in the deepest part of her soul, never forgetting. Mom, don't listen to him. You will live a long life. Shishong held back his tears, clenched Lu Hua's hand, word by word. Seeing this scene, the ward-round doctor also knew that he had made a blunder, but he still kept a straight face and said, anyway, you should consider this matter clearly. If you use drugs outside the hospital indiscriminately, you should sign a statement saying that no matter what the effect is, it has nothing to do with our hospital. I ask you, since you say that Auntie's life is only 3 months, can your hospital guarantee good treatment? Yi Tian sees this, toward ward-round Dr. Cold swept an eye, light way. Even if we can't help it, you're much better than giving the patient the medicine at random. The ward-round doctor was stunned, but continued. It seems that you really can't help it. Yi Tian toward ward-round Dr. Light swept an eye, then way, since you have no way, but I have a way, why don't let me treat? The ward-round doctor lost his voice. It is self-evident that the reason is that the hospital does not want to be responsible. Yi Tian, Auntie, I believe you. I'd like to have a try. At this time, Lu Hua suddenly looked at Yi Tian, word by word. I tell you, you think it over. If conservative treatment, you may be able to live for 3 months, but random medication, you may not live for 3 months. And if you want to take medicine, you have to sign a statement with us. Anyway, it has nothing to do with our hospital. The ward-round doctor heard Lu Hua's words and said in a deep voice. Even if I listen to you, it will be 3 months at most. I'd like to try. Lu Hua refused to smile and said slowly. In her mind, if Yi Tian can cure himself, it is naturally the best. Even if it can't be cured, maybe she will spend less time with Shishong and Shishao, but it can also help them to lighten their burden and make them less in debt to Yi Tian. In this way, they won't have too heavy a burden in their future life. As a mother, this is what she can only do for Shishong and his brother and sister. You. When the ward-round doctor heard Lu Hua's words, he shook his head. Then he took out a pen and paper from his pocket and wrote a disclaimer, saying, "What I should remind you has already reminded you. Since you insist, sign your name. Next, no matter what happens, it has nothing to do with us." Lu Hua did not speak, took the statement, even did not look at it, wrote down his name. Ma. Seeing Lu Hua's appearance, Shi Xiong rubbed his eyes and choked. Jimu Moruozi, where can he not know what Lu Hua is thinking at this moment? Trust me. Yi Tian patted Shi Xiong on the shoulder, then handed Lu Hua the porcelain bottle containing Huichundan and said, "Eat one today, and eat another tomorrow. After eating it, the treatment will be suspended and the patient will have a rest for one night. Tomorrow, he will have an examination. After he gets better, he will eat the remaining one as well." Lu Hua nodded, opened the porcelain bottle and ate the pill. Dan medicine entrance, Lu Hua immediately feel a fragrant liquid along the throat spread. Next, there is a warm feeling all over the body. Even her sad mood just now seems to have improved a lot. This medicine seems to be really useful. I feel as if it has really improved. Maybe it can be cured. Lu Hua aftertaste the taste of pills, toward Yi Tian and Shi Xiong showed a smiling face. No, maybe it can be cured. Shi Xiang squeezed his fingers tightly and said in a loud voice. Don't regret your choice in the future. The ward-round doctor looked at Lu Hua's appearance, coldly, holding a statement, turned and left the ward. What do you think, Ma? Shi Xiong ignored the doctor, but looked at Lu Hua and continued to ask nervously. Although he believes in Yi Tian, the word cancer just makes people turn pale when they hear it, let alone the closest person. I feel much better. Xiao Xiong, you come to support Ma. I want to take you and Xiao Dai down for a walk. Lu Hua laughs and says that she will go down to the ground with her bed. Go down for a walk? Shi Xiong sees Lu Hua's appearance, his eyes are full of incredible ecstasy, and looks at Yi Tian. You know, cancer chemotherapy, although it is to kill cancer cells, but also great damage to the human body. After chemotherapy, the patient's whole body is weak. He just wants to lie on the bed and doesn't want to walk down at all. But now, Lu Hua even takes the initiative to go down for a walk, and he can go down by himself. How can he not be surprised? Activity is also good for the recovery of the body. It's not in the way. At this time, Yi Tian looks at Shi Xiong, smiles and says slowly. Shi Xiong nods his head. Without any hesitation, he and Shi Xiaodai help Lu Hua and take the elevator to the small garden downstairs. Mother and son, walking quietly in the garden, whispering some personal words, it seems that there is no difference with a healthy family. Yi Tian did not go, but stood in the distance, quietly looking at this scene, mouth slightly smile. If Dante is reborn and only changes himself, his life will be a little boring. Let people like Shi Xiang around, can be changed, such a life, more fun. Just as he and Ning Yao used to be in Feng Su and Ling Yu and occasionally incarnate as Dr. Yu Feng, walking in the world of mortals and helping those who are lonely and helpless, when they see the smile on their faces, they are happier than when they break through the cultivation. Ning Yao, where are you? Yi Tian looks at this figure, with a bright smile, gradually more lonely, and then sighs. Thank you, Yi Tian. After a long time, Lu Hua was sleepy and went back to the hospital building to have a rest. After Shi Xiong sent her upstairs, he looked down at Yi Tian who was still in a daze and said sincerely. Between brothers, don't talk about these two words. The secret script I gave you should have been delayed recently. When my aunt gets well, I'll remember to practice well. Tomorrow morning, I'll come to see you. Yi Tian punched Shi Xiong in the chest, waved his hand, and then turned away. Leave. Yi Tian Gang walked a few steps, Shi Xiong behind him suddenly cried out. Yi Tian looks back. I don't know what's hidden in your heart, and I don't know if you are waiting for someone, but I believe you will find it. Shi Xiang looks at Yi Tian, smiles and says in a loud voice. Yi Tian raises his eyebrows and smiles. Tang Tang Dante was enlightened by an ordinary man. Even if you can't find it, you still have Ice Devil and Su Qing, who can still envy us. But at this time, Shi Xiong suddenly frowned and added another sentence. Go away. Hearing this, Yi Tian's eyes changed. He laughed and scolded, waved his hand, turned and strode away. The ends of the earth, mountains and rivers exotic, but he believes that one day, he will be able to find Ning Yao. Ding-ling-ling. Just after walking out of the hospital, Yi Tian's mobile phone suddenly rings. As soon as the phone is connected, there comes a respectful voice from the sales manager of the 4S store, saying that the car ordered by Yi Tian has arrived, the formalities have been completed, and you can pick it up. Can you finally get rid of the life of walking? Hearing this, Yi Tian smiles, stops a taxi and rushes to the 4S shop. Mr. Yi, we have finished all the procedures for the car. Now we can go on the road. Seeing Yi Tian go to the door, the sales manager trots out, respectfully welcomes Yi Tian in, comes to the front of a brand new Land Rover, and gives him the key to the car. Thank you. Yi Tian took the car key and nodded at will. Mr. Yi, it's very kind of you. These are what we should do. The sales manager waved his hand again and again, with fear in his voice. Although he is a luxury car seller, he can buy a car with more than 1 million yuan at a time. Which one is a layman? After leaving the 4S shop, Yi Tian stepped on the accelerator and drove into the traffic. When his parents were alive, he drove many luxury cars, but those cars belonged to his parents or the company. This is his first car. Naturally, he feels comfortable everywhere. The Range Rover Yi Tian bought is a top version with large displacement and sufficient power. Although it can't be compared with the top sports car, it is also very maneuverable. The new car on the road, of course, is particularly concerned. However, Yi Tian does not have the desire to drag racing, but drives normally on the road. As far as he is concerned, there is no way to compare the so-called extreme speed stimulation brought by drag racing with the flying sword. When I was in Fangsu and Lingyu, once a year, there was a flying sword competition. Practitioners from all kinds of blessed places gather and show their skills. The picture of 10,000 swords shuttling and the sword chi breaking through the vast clouds, I don't know how many times more magnificent than the so-called racing car. In his 200 years of cultivation, he participated in 5 flying sword competitions and won 5 championships for Qingning Blessed Land. After that, the friar of Fangsu and Lingyu was no longer willing to fight with Yi Tianbiao. Instead, he was invited to be the leader of the jury in every competition. Of course, what's more important is that when the flying sword flies, the sky is vast and unobstructed. Even if the friars accidentally fall from the flying sword, they will not have any problems with their strong physique and skills. Can be in the busy road drag racing, once an accident, it is in the murder of other people's lives. What's the matter with this guy? But in this world, there are not so many things, but there are always mediocrity. Yi Tian has been driving on the road for less than half an hour, and then he finds a Ferrari in front of him. Even if he slows down to avoid or give way, the other side will not give up. I drive like a tortoise. What kind of car can I buy? Can I walk on 2 legs? After twice and thrice, Ferrari took the initiative to slow down. When it was parallel with Yi Tian, the window of the driver's seat opened. A greasy-faced young man stretched out his hand from the window, pointed to Yi Tian, and then sneered loudly. I can't help being ridiculed when I drive in a proper way. Yi Tian heard the sound, a burst of speechless, but his eyes flashed a few cold. Clay figurine still has 3 points of anger. What's more, he was the 5-time champion of flying sword. Without any hesitation, he stepped down the accelerator, speeded up and passed Ferrari directly. Boom! 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 Almost at the same time when he accelerates, the greasy-faced young man in Ferrari screams, and then the same throttle blows down, chasing Yi Tian, trying to block Yi Tian. Yi Tian smiles and ponders. The steering wheel turns suddenly. Under his control, Land Rover's huge body is like a swimming fish, shuttling through the traffic without any delay. Although the Ferrari tried its best, it could only follow him to smell the tail gas. Isn't it good to drive so slowly and walk on your legs? Do you have to come out and show off? A moment later, Yi Tian slowed down, lowered the window, looked at the pale young man in Ferrari's driver's seat, and returned what he had said. You damn! As soon as the greasy-faced young man heard this, his eyes immediately turned sulky. Your middle finger just now is very soft. It's really powerless. Follow your reversing mirror and study hard. With a cold smile, Tian leaned out and held Ferrari's reversing mirror like lightning. He twisted it slightly, only to hear a click sound. The reversing mirror immediately broke into two pieces. Immediately after that, Tian's hand shakes slightly, and the reversing mirror is thrown into the Ferrari by him. Immediately, Tian a foot throttle boom down, floating away, Ferrari far behind. This series of actions is like flowing water without any delay, just as Tian has done it thousands of times. You know, the skiers' flying sword competition in Fangsu and Lingyu is not just a simple flying sword competition. In order to get a good place, many friars often use the flying sword with one mind and two minds. While manipulating the flying sword, they use all kinds of Taoism and magic weapons on the flying sword to stop competitors. Tian is able to win the championship in that case. When he controls the car, he breaks a reversing mirror. Naturally, there is no difference between him and pediatrics. The greasy-faced young man, holding a reversing mirror in his arms, looks at the far back of the Land Rover in horror. His eyes are fixed on the license plate. He only feels that there is some moisture in his crotch. It seems that he is scared to squeeze out some urine. Lying trough, cruel man. After a long time, the greasy-faced young man touched the handle toward his crotch, shook his cold sweat, took out his mobile phone, pressed a number, and his eyes twinkled with ferocity and schadenfreude. He said, "Elder sister, I found a cruel man, no matter in driving skills or skills, who is first class. Are you interested in playing with him?" For Ferrari owner's action, Tian naturally knows nothing. Even if he knows, he will not have any feeling for this kind of action. All the way, after driving the car back to the rental house, Tian began to practice in the eyes of the array. As night falls, Tian has had a meal at his home, and Su Qing finally comes back. However, Su Qing's body with a strong whine, and red eyes, like crying. But Tian didn't ask her anything. He just nodded to her and told her that the rice she cooked was in the refrigerator. When she was hungry, she warmed up and ate it. Then she went back to the sofa and continued to practice. "I saw a Land Rover parked outside. Whose car is it?" Su nodded and walked 2 steps to the kitchen. He looked at Tian and asked suspiciously, "I just bought it. Would you like to use the car?" Tian a casual, light way. "I don't have to." After hearing this, Su Qing was stunned for a long time and hurried to the kitchen. But when she came out of the living room and saw the full moon in the sky, her eyes could not help feeling faint. Not Tian can even afford the top Land Rover, but she the fate of the occasion will. How can such a twists and turns? And she and Tian, under all these circumstances, can fate be tied together again? All night long. Tian and Su Qing go to the hospital after eating breakfast at her home. As for Su Qing, they go to work. When they leave, they tell her that she doesn't have to cook dinner at night. She will be late after work and eat at the place where she goes to work. "I'll go first." After returning to the rental house, Tian starts the car, nods to Su and drives away. It's kind of him to stay here with Su Qing. How can he drive Su Qing to work, which may make her misunderstand? Su Qing looks at Tian's back as he drives away, with a look of loss. She thought that Tian would take her to work, but unexpectedly, Tian didn't even mention it. A moment later, Tian rushed to the door of the hospital. "Tian, do it quickly. Have you eaten yet? Would you like to join us? Lu Hua looks good today." As soon as she sees Tian, she says hello as she is watching Shi Xiong and Shi Xiaodai having breakfast. "No, I did before I came here." "Take your time. Did you make the rounds today? Has the test been done?" Tian smiles and shakes his head, then inquires. Although he knew that with the powerful vitality of Huichundan, it should help remove the cancer cells in Liu Hua's body. But this, after all, is only his conjecture, even if the success rate is very high, but it still needs actual verification. As the saying goes, everything is not afraid of 10,000, just in case. If Huichundan doesn't work, he'll have to think of another way. "Not yet." Shi Xiong shook his head. "Bed 1 patient, Lu Hua, you took other medicine yesterday, didn't you?" Speaking of Cao Cao, Cao Cao arrived. Almost at the same time that Shi Xiong's words were falling, the ward-round doctor, as well as several doctors and nurses, pushed the door open and came in. When he saw Lu Hua, he led an old doctor with a rather dignified appearance, and immediately said in a deep voice, "Yes." She took the medicine I gave her. Yi Tian nodded his head and said, "Nonsense." The old doctor looked at Yi Tian. When he saw Yi Tian's age, he frowned, looked at Lu Hua, and said in a deep voice, "From today on, give me those miscellaneous medicines right away. Even if you have cancer, you can't take any medicine. Do you know if it's a life-saving medicine or a life-saving medicine? My medicine can only save lives, not harm people." Yi Tian frowned slightly and said calmly, "The medicine of Huichun pill is peaceful. It was originally the medicine used by the friars in Fengsu and Lingyu after they were injured. How could it harm people? What are you shouting about? At your age, how many medical books have you read and how many patients have you been ill with?" Professor Li is an authority in the field of liver cancer treatment. Isn't he as knowledgeable as you, and doesn't know which drugs can save people and which drugs will kill you? As soon as the ward-round doctor hears Yi Tian's attitude, he immediately scolds him loudly. "I haven't read too many medical books, just over 100,000. I haven't read too many patients. If you give a 10% discount, there should be more than 1 million. I don't know how loud you are. How many medical books have you read and how many patients have you seen?" Yi Tianping looked at the doctor and said faintly. At the beginning, one of his hobbies in Fengsu and spiritual realm was to collect all kinds of secret books recording the refining of miraculous drugs and pills. These things are also used to cure and save people and help people improve their accomplishments, which is no different from medical books. As for the patients, in the past 200 years, Feng Kunling has been benefited by him. There are more than 1 million people who have been helped by the pills he has refined. Maybe it's possible to add a zero to it. You crazy. Where does the ward-round doctor know these secrets? He thinks that Yi Tian is bluffing and talking crazy. He looks at him scornfully. Well, don't make any noise. Professor Li was also amused by Yi Tian's words. After shaking his head and interrupting their argument, he looked at Yi Tian and said in a deep voice, "I know your mind is good. You want the patient to get better as soon as possible, but you have to trust our doctors. You can't give everything to the patient. What if you eat good or bad? Yes, you family members should also remember that you can't go to the doctor in case of urgent illness. If the medicine you take doesn't work, it's okay, but if the medicine you take is deadly medicine and delays the treatment, how sad you have to be." Several other doctors, along with him, advised Lu Hua and Shi Xiong. "I know you mean well, but needless to say." Yi Tian waved his hand, looked at Professor Li and said calmly, "Let's start the examination and test the activity of cancer cells in her body. You are so powerful. Why don't you test yourself and ask us to help you?" The ward-round doctor couldn't stand Yi Tian's attitude and said angrily, "If I can do it, I won't let her in the hospital." Yi Tian looked at him, light way. Although his mind is powerful now, it is not enough to see a person's vitality in death. If his cultivation breaks through and reaches this stage, his observation will be more accurate than the detection in the hospital. You. The ward-round doctor was blocked and had nothing to say. He stamped his foot and stared at Yi Tian. He was angry and said, "Okay, then check. I see what you have to say after the results come out." Yi Tian more than once, just toward the worried Shixiang, nodded slightly. Professor Li opened his mouth, hesitated, waved, and asked the nurse to take Lu Hua for an examination. When you are young and don't understand, you will be arrogant when you read 3 or 2 medical books. When you read 2 or 3 patients, you will be shameless. Today, if the patient's condition is not good again and again, if it is aggravated because of your medicine, I will call the police immediately, sue you for illegal medical practice and arrest you. The ward-round doctor waited until Lu Hua left, and looked at Yi Tian with poor eyes, word by word. Yi Tian sneered and said no more. Facts speak louder than words, and when the results come out, everything will be clear. Half an hour later, Shi Xiong with Lu Hua hurried back to the ward, mother and son, full of spring breeze, especially Lu Hua. In addition to the joy, there are strong dull eyes, walking seems to be floating. As for the little nurse who was behind their mother and son, she was out of her wits, especially when she saw Yi Tian. It's a success. At the sight of the expressions on these faces, Yi Tian was delighted. Something's wrong. Is the medicine given by this boy really effective? But it's advanced liver cancer ward round doctor. In the heart is suddenly a click, and then looked at the little nurse, urgent voice, the patient's examination results? There are obvious signs that the cancer cells in the patient's body are under control. Not only that, many of the spread cancer cells have changed into normal ones. In addition, the functions of various organs of the patient's body have also been greatly improved. The little nurse swallows saliva and looks at Yi Tian in horror. Then she says slowly, "How can it be that the cancer cells turn good? This is a patient with advanced liver cancer. How can cancer cells be controlled so easily?" In a flash, the ward is like a frying pan. Every doctor's eyes fall on Yi Tian. In his eyes, it's full of incredible. Cancer cells are under control and getting better. All these are signs that cancer patients are recovering. In the face of these eyes, Yi Tian smiled calm, face without any fluctuations, as if already expected all this. Did the test go wrong? The ward round doctor was stunned for more than half a day. Looking at the little nurse, he asked in a trembling voice. There was no mistake. We checked it carefully. The little nurse shook her head hard. In fact, the first time she got the test report, she also felt that there was a mistake in the inspection. After repeated confirmation, she found that this was not a mistake, but a fact. God! When the ward round doctor hears the news, he shakes his body involuntarily. Then he stares at Yi Tian strangely. His eyes are strange to the extreme. There are both strong shock and fear, but more of them are incomprehensible. Patients with advanced liver cancer, a high difficulty of treatment, as Tian. But now, the cancer cells have been controlled and improved, which is a miracle in the history of medicine. Moreover, there is no doubt that the medicine Yi Tian gave Lu Hua yesterday is not the kind of lethal medicine he thought, but a life-saving medicine. Thank you, Leaf. Shishong wiped a tear hard, looking at Yi Tian, voice choked way. He had heard that his mother had only 3 months to live. He thought the sky above his head was going to collapse, but now he felt that the sky was very high. He knew that this kind of change was not a miracle, but because Yi Tian helped him hold up the sky. Between brothers, don't say thank you again. Yi Tian shook his head with a smile and said. Shishong nodded hard, but the tears in his eyes were still clear. He swore that he would repay Yi Tian from now on to his death and all his life. No matter what the situation is. What kind of medicine do you give patients, can you tell us? Professor Li Lang, after a long time, went to the leaf day in front of him, respectfully asked. He can't cure Lu Hua, but Yi Tian's medicine gives Lu Hua signs of recovery. How can he not treat Yi Tian respectfully? Auntie, you have a good rest. The rest of the medicine will be taken at noon tomorrow. It should be ready in 2 days. Yi Tian ignored Professor Li, but looked at Lu Hua with a warm smile. Ah! Lu Hua nodded, now also was sobbing, no matter how white canthus, but tears still can't control down. Yesterday, she learned from the ward round doctor that he still has 3 months to live at most. After that, she wanted to die and not drag Shishong and Shishao down. But where can think of, because of Yi Tian's help, after one night, everything will turn around. All these, how can she not thank Yi Tian? Didn't you hear what Professor Li asked you? The ward round doctor saw that Yi Tian turned a blind eye to Professor Li. He couldn't help frowning and said. Oh? Yi Tian looked back at him with a faint smile, and then picked eyebrows to play with the taste. Isn't my medicine lethal? What else can I say? The ward round doctor opened his mouth and his cheek was red, but he couldn't say a word. He looked embarrassed, just like eating half an apple and finding half a worm. We just made a mistake. I'm really sorry. Please tell us what kind of medicine it is. Professor Li immediately bowed 90 degrees to Yi Tian, and then said respectfully. I'm sorry, my medicine, you can't make it, even if I tell you, it's useless. Yi Tian looks at Professor Li and shakes his head. As he said, what he gave Lu Hua was pills, which was beyond the level of medicine. This kind of thing cannot be made by hospitals at all, and there is no way to produce it in large quantities. Unless, this is the place where there are plenty of spiritual energy and many monks in the square-inch spiritual realm. There are thousands of acres of spiritual medicine fields planted with dewflowers, and thousands of alchemists refine them under his guidance. Do you know how many people you can save since your medicine is effective? Millions of patients hope you can help them. If you don't tell them, isn't that killing them? The ward-round doctor hears these words, the facial expression becomes excited, the face swells red, to the leaf day loudly accuses away. I said, my medicine, you can't make it. Do you think even you know the truth, I will not understand it? Don't kidnap others with morality just because they have done something you can't do and they are better than you. The leaf day toward ward-round doctor after indifference swept an eye, coldly way. Just as Tian said, he does not understand what the ward-round doctor said, but what can he understand? Even if he keeps refining pills every day, where can he get so many dewdrops? To put it bluntly, it's just that the ward-round doctor is unwilling to throw dirty water on him to kidnap him. Mr. Wang's words may be a little ugly, but what he said is true. Sir, please tell me the treatment plan. No matter what you require, I will try my best to meet it. For those cancer patients in the world, please. Seeing this, Professor Li said to Tian sincerely and knelt down in front of him. It seems that if I don't make things clear today, you won't let me go. Since you want to know why I said that even if I told you, you can't do it, come with me. Tian looks at Professor Li's appearance, hands him up, sweeps his eyes at the doctors, after a light sentence, strides out of the ward, and then goes in to find an empty ward. Professor Li and others looked at each other and followed Tian quickly. Since you want to know, I'll tell you. When all the people came in, Tian closed the door with his backhand and glanced at them. Then he brushed his hand toward the air and said, fire. Water transport. The wind is coming boom. Hum. Hoo. In a flash, there was a fireball in the air, which immediately turned into a water ball, followed by a clear wind blade, and then disappeared into the void. This strange scene, in an instant, makes the whole ward become dead and silent, and the needle can be heard. Every doctor's eyes are focused on Tian, just like looking at the gods. But what they can be sure of is that those are not magic. However, they can't understand how Tian did it. I've taught you these. Can you do it? Tianhuan field of vision, word by word of the cold way. The audience was dumb. I'm kidding. If they can do this incredible thing, will they still work here? You master, are you an immortal? Professor Li looked at Tian in horror, with a more cautious and odd look. Immortal? I'm not, but compared with you people, it's about the same. Tian took a look at Professor Li, then looked at the ward-round doctor and said faintly, now you still think that the reason why I don't say it is to hide my privacy, is to waste the lives of those patients? The ward-round doctor's face was pale, his legs trembled, and he fell down on the ground. He was almost scared to pee. What kind of bear heart and leopard gall did you eat when you quarrel with an immortal? He was even glad that the immortal seemed to have a good temper. Otherwise, it would be 2 words to say whether he could live now. I can understand the urgency of saving people, but there is no need to talk about moral kidnapping. I can save 1 or 2 people, but I can't save millions of people. Tianping was quiet, and then his mind turned. He took out the only dew flower left from the storage ring and threw it to Professor Li, saying, the key to my cure is in this flower. It's not easy. You can study it slowly. It depends on your own ability to find out what you can find from it and the key to treating patients. He was never mean and cold-blooded. On the contrary, he had not cooled down a bit of his blood in the 200 years of cultivation. Otherwise, he would not have been incarnated with Ning Yao, walking in the world of mortals and living for all. Similarly, if this is not the case, he will not spend so much money with such people as the ward-round doctor and Professor Li. He will just walk away, and he will not give Professor Li the only plant left to do research. But even if his blood is not cold, he is still extremely unhappy about moral kidnapping. He has the ability to save people, that is his ability, but if he can save 1 or 2 people, let him save millions of people. I'm sorry, he really can't. Thank you, Master. I will study it carefully. Professor Lee anxiously took the dewflower and bowed to Yi Tian deeply. He said thanks. What happened here today, I hope is limited to this room. If there are other things after the past, don't blame me for being rude. Yi Tian waved his hand at will, and then his eyes were as cold as a knife. He swept toward the ward-round doctor, and raised his hand. A fireball fell on an iron bedside table not far away. Boom! In a flash, the square bedside table twisted and distorted in the fear eyes of doctors, and finally turned into a pool of molten iron and fell to the ground.